Chapter 727. After panting for a moment, Lin Yuan recovered some of his strength. However, he still lay there without moving, secretly observing the existence that had ambushed him through the eye of God. After using up all 3 probing chances, Lin Yuan still couldn't see the other party's status panel. However, he could still recognize the other party's identity, a human. In the endless sea, where demonic beasts ran rampant, where no one without dragon bloodline could enter, a human actually appeared here. Lin Yuan was sure that this human was definitely not a demonic beast that had transformed. In fact, even Ning Tianqing's transformation could be considered successful. However, he still had demonic beast tattoos on his body and would unknowingly emit demonic qi. Although most of the demonic beasts in the Endless Sea had begun to transform, they still retained most of their demonic beast characteristics. They could barely be considered as humanoid monsters. Even the gray-scaled flood dragon person under Lin Yuan's command couldn't compare to them. Moreover, although the person who had ambushed Lin Yuan was standing at the bottom of the sea, the earth energy in his body was majestic, constantly preventing the undercurrents from approaching. This was completely different from the demonic beasts that liked water. Through the observation of the Eye of God, Lin Yuan could even see the reverence in the eyes of some of the nearby sea demon experts. It seemed that the human who had ambushed Lin Yuan was an extraordinary existence. Just like how the humans on the Tianwu continent ostracized the demonic beasts, even in a place like the northern frontier, the demonic beasts could barely coexist peacefully with the humans. In the dark corners that Lin Yuan couldn't see, there were still countless demonic beasts and humans who were hostile to each other, even killing each other. However, both sides had a tacit understanding to clean up the mess before dawn. At least on the surface, the northern frontier was still a beautiful place where humans and demonic beasts coexisted. However, in the northern frontier, when humans and demonic beasts saw each other, most of them would look at each other with contempt, hostility, or even hatred. There was no reverence or respect at all. The former was not a big deal. After all, the northern frontier was a harsh place. Countless humans who entered the Hengduan mountain range to make a living had lost their lives to the claws and fangs of the Yao beasts. There were also countless Yao beasts who were killed by the Yao beasts before they could mature. Their bodies were dismembered into countless valuable materials and sold in the human cities. The two sides had long since formed a death grudge. Without 2 or 3 generations of descendants, this grudge would never be resolved. But even if this hatred was resolved, both sides were still 2 different races. At most, they would just ignore each other. Lin Yuan felt that even if he lived until the green leaf water lotus bloomed and bore fruit, he might not be able to see it. This human must be incredible. Fisherman, that brat isn't dead yet. Why don't you go up and finish him off? Qiu Booty crossed his arms in front of his chest, a hint of fear flashing in his eyes as he asked softly. I only owe the West Sea Dragon Palace a sword strike. The fisherman turned his head to glance at Wu Yu and said indifferently, I have fulfilled my promise. From tomorrow onwards, I will leave the Endless Sea and return to the Sky Martial continent. Whoever stops me will die. Although the fisherman replied, he did not open his mouth. His words were filled with the sound of surging sword qi. As soon as he finished speaking, the fisherman sheathed his sword and walked towards the outer sea with an expressionless face. The Resentment Society smiled bitterly and shook its head. Like a little old man, it bent its body and slowly approached Lin Yuan with its hands behind its back. Since the fisherman was not willing to finish him off, it could only do it itself. As for whether Lin Yuan had any backup plans, that was not its concern. If they could not kill Lin Yuan today, the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas would take their lives. Looks like the Dragon Tribe of the 4 Seas really wants me dead. Lin Yuan lay on the ground as a fierce look flashed across his eyes. This fisherman was definitely not an ordinary person. At least, with Lin Yuan's understanding of the Sky Martial continent, it was impossible for the current sects and empires to produce such an outstanding disciple. This person was either from the Heavenly Gate Protectors faction, or he was like Yang Qinglin of the Divine Blood sect who had been hibernating in the northern frontier. He had also fallen in an ancient battle but had set up a backup plan and was reborn in the future. Such an existence owed the West Sea Dragon Palace a sword strike, but the benefits that he could bring to the West Sea Dragon Palace would definitely not be as simple as a sword strike. But today, the West Sea Dragon Palace had resolutely activated the fisherman and stabbed Lin Yuan with his sword. Although the fisherman did not kill Lin Yuan, under the 65% damage reduction, he still knocked Lin Yuan to the ground. He had not recovered even after 10 breaths of time. With such an injury, if Lin Yuan had not activated the golden body technique in time, according to the system's calculations, this injury would have been more than enough to kill him 3 times over. And this was just a casual sword strike from the fisherman. When the guy said, "Whoever stops me will die," he was really stating a fact, and not threatening the unfulfilled wish and resentment society. "Tao Tai, are you still not going to make a move?" Lin Yuan lay on the ground and struggled to turn over. He glanced at the warden and fish head who were being restrained by the resentment society and could only raise his head and roar. There was a gap of 2 realms between him and the demonic king realm. If he wanted to fight against the resentment society that was determined to kill him without external help, it would be a fool's dream. In the web novels and Lin Yuan's previous life, fighting above one's level seemed to be a constant topic. As long as one was called a genius, almost all of them could easily defeat opponents 1 or 2 levels higher. But in reality, this kind of fighting above one's level became more and more impossible the further one progressed. After all, even if there was a gap in attributes in the early stages, it would only be a difference of a few or 10 points. It was not difficult to fight above one's level with ruthlessness and methods, especially for someone like Lin Yuan who had added points to himself. Although he had not broken through his realm, his various attributes had already reached the peak of his current realm. In total, he was not weaker than a high-level enemy. However, the difference in attributes between the Mountain Lord realm and the Demonic King realm was already tens of thousands of points. Then, how terrifying was the difference between the Desolate Demonic realm and the Demonic King realm? 100,000. 1,000,000. Fighting above one's level. That was called courting death. Humph. The Resentment Society coldly snorted and stretched out its hand to stroke the transparent tentacles behind its head. It sneered, "Black Jiao, do you think you can escape death just because you've arranged for helpers? I've also arranged for people to be on the outside. Once someone crosses the boundary, they will immediately be entangled. Today, no one can save you, I've said it." Lin Yuan did not reply. He just kept moving his body that was like a pile of mud. Abundant demonic energy kept exploding in his body, and his damaged meridians and flesh were rapidly repaired. His condition was also recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. Like a cat playing with a mouse, the Resentment Society coldly watched Lin Yuan continue to struggle, its speed still not fast nor slow. Chapter 728. Lin Yuan had become a turtle in a jar. The Resentment Society's eyes flashed with a look of contentment. This Black Jiao who had made a name for himself in the Sky Martial continent, seemed to be nothing more than that. After thinking about it, the Resentment Society could not think of any loopholes in their plan. Ao Siphon had already made preparations. Once Yuzi was unable to withstand the firepower, they would immediately send a reserve to hold back Ao Siphon. Thus, they were not in a hurry. As long as Lin Yuan was dead, everything would be fine. Thus, they decided to torture Lin Yuan to death, to let the entire Endless Sea and even the Sky Martial continent know what would happen to those who were not willing to cooperate with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. The Resentment Society could not see behind them, and did not expect that an even more terrifying existence than they had imagined was baring its ferocious fangs, and was closing in on Lin Yuan. A late-stage Mountain Lord Evil Dragon. One punch. An early-stage Demonic Beast King Evil Dragon. It was still one punch. The muscular Tao Tai was like a cold killing machine. The moment Lin Yuan's words landed, he suddenly charged out from a corner, not caring about his own side. He walked towards the area where Lin Yuan was, and smashed the demonic beasts in front of him into meat paste like he was swatting flies. At first, there were still some sea demons who were unconvinced and clamored to find trouble with Tao Tai. However, after killing 7 Demon King Realm sea demons in a row, Tao Tai didn't even have the intention to stop and take a breath. After such a calm attitude was revealed, most of the sea demons silently took a step back and chose to stay away from this godlike existence. Danger. As a demonic beast, it was instinctive to sense danger. The Resentment Society was thinking about how to torture and kill Lin Yuan as they approached Lin Yuan. Unexpectedly, at this moment, a chill suddenly drilled out from the bottom of their hearts, and their little old man's body directly trembled. They subconsciously turned their head, and saw a 3-meter-tall giant standing behind them, almost shrouding their current body in shadows. "Hey Jiao, although you and my boss are colleagues, that's a different matter. The last time I saved you, it was because my boss gave me an order. This time, I'm saving you. It's my personal action. Do you understand what I mean?" Tao Tai did not seem to be in a hurry to kill the Resentment Society. Instead, he looked at Lin Yuan, who was jumping on the ground like a salted fish, and then asked a question. "Last time? Boss? Colleague?" A look of doubt flashed through Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes. He didn't have the memory of the puppet's body. The word Tao Tai just now was completely subconscious, belonging to Lin Yuan's survival instinct. However, Lin Yuan searched his entire memory and still couldn't remember who this giant man was, let alone what he meant by boss and colleague. Good heavens, after waking up, I directly became a worker. Wait a minute, Lin Yuan's eyes changed slightly. It wasn't that he didn't have the memory of the puppet's body at all. After confirming that it was safe, the puppet's body would report the situation to Lin Yuan's consciousness every 3 days. When the two were completely disconnected, it was after the puppet's body was imprisoned in the underwater prison. After all, at that time, the puppet's body wasn't sure if it would be monitored. In order to ensure that the news of his body being carried in the beast pouch wouldn't leak out, Lin Yuan's body had never been released. He didn't have any memory of this Tao Tai, which meant that he knew him, which should have happened after he was imprisoned in the underwater prison. But that was where the strangeness came from. Tao Tai didn't have the blood of the dragon race. Lin Yuan didn't even know what it was. Under the observation of the Eye of God, Lin Yuan could clearly see that this guy was essentially an object composed of countless insects. It was just that these insects didn't seem to have their own consciousness, and all of them acted in unison according to the consciousness of Tao Tai. That was why there was such a giant man standing here. If Tao Tai wanted to at this moment, he could turn into countless insects and hide in the corners of the endless sea. Moreover, those evil dragons seemed to have no impression of Tao Tai at all, otherwise it would be impossible for them to ignore such a powerful existence. Therefore, this guy was not a member of the dragon race of the 4 seas, nor was it a sea monster with a grudge against the dragon palace of the 4 seas. It was hard to say whether it was a living thing in essence. It was more like the existence of Lin Yuan's previous puppet's body. Lin Yuan even felt that Tao Tai must be the scapegoat for the explosion of his consciousness that controlled the puppet's body. "What do you want?" Lin Yuan asked tentatively while healing his wounds. Although he wasn't sure what the other party was, since his survival instinct felt that he could be safe today after calling out Tao Tai, then he might as well believe in his choice and talk to Tao Tai about the conditions for his attack. Tao Tai said with a smile, "You are the same as my boss, an existence from the other side of the bitter sea. The creatures of this world don't know what the title, Tao Tai, means, but don't you know? The same as his boss. Both of them were existences from the other side of the bitter sea." Lin Yuan was silent for a moment, and then his eyes suddenly flashed. Tao Tai's boss was also one of the hosts selected by the system, and he should also belong to the quite powerful category. Even if the current Lin Yuan were to go all out, regardless of attribute points, materials, and the like, he could at most rely on the system to copy some fierce generals like Xiang Yu and Lu Bu. He was barely standing at the limit of human beings, but that was all. Lin Yuan still couldn't create an existence like Tao Tai. The body of a puppet should be aware of this. Therefore, In his subconscious mind, he felt that once Tao Tai appeared, he would be safe. This was a mixed double fight from the two system hosts. It was definitely not something that a mere demon king could withstand. Although I know that you are not a real Tao Tai, your character and appearance are indeed very similar to the characteristics of Tao Tai in the records I have read. It seems that your boss is far stronger than I thought. Lin Yuan's eyes flashed and he said in a deep voice, I know you can eat, but eating meat and eating soil are two different concepts. If you help me, I can tell you the location of a demonized black tortoise. The biggest characteristic of Tao Tai was its gluttony. In mythological records, it was a beast that symbolized greed. It was said that because it did not eat enough, it ate its own body, leaving only its big mouth and head. This guy was an imitation of Tao Tai. It also did not have its own body, and its character was quite similar. To be able to create such an existence, it was feared that the boss that Lin Yuan had never met before was already among the top of the system hosts. Chapter 729. In Lin Yuan's previous life, some picky diners were also called gluttons. Such an existence might refuse many temptations, but they would never refuse a delicious meal. For Tao Tai, it should be the same. Although the number of demon beasts in the Endless Sea was not small, and their bloodlines were not weak, almost all of them having the blood of the dragon race flowing in their veins, these demon beasts with the blood of the dragon race and the demon beasts of the dragon race were still essentially two different species. For an existence like Tao Tai, the real temptation was the ancestral dragons of the Four Seas Dragon Clan, because they were real dragons. No matter how pure the bloodline of the other dragon blood demon beasts was, they could not arouse Tao Tai's interest. But Black Tortoise was different. Even if it was not the Black Tortoise in the myths and legends, it had the blood of a holy beast, which was far more attractive to Tao Tai than these ordinary demon beasts of the Endless Sea. Although the last time they met, the demonized Black Tortoise mistakenly thought that Lin Yuan was a descendant of the demon court, so it took some care of Lin Yuan. But it was undeniable that in the war against Hung Jun, the Black Tortoise had begun to distort and could no longer return to its original appearance. Over the years, if it had not been for the suppression of the Sarira of the senior monk, it was feared that it would have long lost itself and become a great demon that wreaked havoc on the northern frontier. Lin Yuan did not want to bury such a ticking time bomb in the northern frontier. It must be dealt with as soon as possible. A ruler should have the appearance of a ruler. Putting aside personal grievances, Lin Yuan needed to be responsible for the people of the northern frontier. Tao Tai rolled his eyes and nodded with a smile, saying, I am satisfied with this reward. However, at this moment, it seemed that resentment, which had been ignored by the two of them, suddenly raised its head. Its face was full of undisguised viciousness. The transparent tentacles behind its head suddenly danced and pierced directly into Tao Tai's chest. Black Jiao, I have to admit that the helper you found is very strong. After the tentacle succeeded, the Society of Resentment's face became even more ruthless. But you shouldn't have ignored me. My tentacle contains a very strong neurotoxin. Even Lord Dragon King would be paralyzed for a while if he touched it. Your helper has at most 3 breaths of time to live. As soon as he said that, the Resentment Society's expression turned sinister. He strode forward and continued, Black Jiao, I originally wanted to give you a quick death, but I've changed my mind now. I'll make you die a horrible death. The Resentment Society was originally hesitating between killing Lin Yuan and quickly getting rid of him. They slowed down before to think about how to deal with him, but after the appearance of Tao Tai, they lost face in an instant. At this moment, they were furious, and the Resentment Society no longer had any scruples. There were transparent tentacles behind its head. Lin Yuan hadn't guessed that the Resentment Society had the bloodline of a monster beast. Now the answer had been revealed. In addition to the bloodline of the dragon race, this guy also had the characteristics of a jellyfish. No wonder this guy could clearly transform himself into a human form and then start a new life on the Tianwu continent like Ning Tiansheng, but he didn't do so. Instead, he kept the tentacles behind his head. Then these tentacles were likely to be one of his trump cards. Jellyfish looked very beautiful, but they were poisonous. Their transparent tentacles stored neurotoxins to fight against hunters or paralyze their prey. Some of the more poisonous jellyfish could easily poison a human to death with just a touch. Since Lin Yuan's rebirth, he didn't know much about the sea monster beasts, but just like in his previous life, the monster beasts that could dominate or roar in the endless sea almost all had the bloodline of whales, sharks, and the like. Just like in the Tianwu continent, wolves, tigers, and leopards were better than cows, sheep, and horses. This was the gap between species. No matter which world it was in, it was the same. However, this was the first time Lin Yuan had seen a jellyfish-type monster beast. He didn't need to think too much to know that the toxicity of the Resentment Society couldn't be weak. After all, it was an existence in the Monster King realm. Squeezing out a little bit of the neurotoxins from its body could probably instantly kill a monster beast in the desolate monster realm. Unfortunately, this time was different. It was true that the Resentment Society had succeeded, but it was also a fact that they had found the wrong opponent. What was Tao Tai? Lin Yuan didn't know. But he saw clearly that Tao Tai's body was made up of countless tiny insects. It wasn't even a whole body. The so-called organs and nerves, it didn't have anything. Things like toxins naturally had no effect on it. Some of the insects were infected by the neurotoxins, so it directly abandoned those poisoned insects and completed the detoxification. Lin Yuan saw it very clearly. The moment the transparent tentacles pierced into Tao Tai's body, the insects on the surface of Tao Tai's body began to slowly sink into its body, and its chest instantly collapsed into a hole. A moment later, the insects near the hole began to split themselves. In the blink of an eye, the original one insect became 7 or 8. Due to the small size of these insects and their fast splitting speed, coupled with the fact that Lin Yuan was the only witness, the rest of the monster beasts didn't realize that this unreasonably strong existence was completely different from them. With this kind of body made up of insects that could split themselves to repair injuries, Tao Tai could be said to have a true immortal body. No matter how powerful the healing techniques in the world were, no matter how strong the physique, no matter how tyrannical the bloodline, they were not as powerful as the insects on Tao Tai's body. Even before the battle, Tao Tai only needed to leave one insect somewhere and it could easily achieve the legendary rebirth from a drop of blood. Paw! Tao Tai suddenly stretched out his hand and pressed down on the Resentment Society, who was just about to take a step forward. His low voice was like that of an evil spirit crawling out of hell. I hate it when people interrupt me, but you taste pretty good. It's limp and numb. It seems that the neurotoxin in your body is a good seasoning. It wasn't just Lin Yuan who was dumbfounded. Almost all the sea monsters who were watching from the sidelines opened their mouths wide. That was a neurotoxin that could instantly kill a desolate demon realm expert. Even an existence at the level of the Four Seas Dragon King would be paralyzed and unable to move for a long time. What did this guy say? Limp and numb, a good seasoning. Could it be that this guy was more fierce than the Dragon King? Tao Tai suddenly stretched out his hand and grabbed the tentacles behind the Resentment Society's head. With a strong pull, a large amount of juice splashed in all directions. More than 10 transparent tentacles had neatly appeared in Tao Tai's right hand. The Resentment Society was kicked away by his foot. At this moment, it was constantly rolling and twitching on the ground. His face was twisted and ferocious. It was unknown whether it was because of hatred or because of pain. Chapter 730. Several transparent tentacles jumped in Tao Tai's palm as if they had become living creatures. How is this possible? How can you be okay? Chiu Wudi, who was confronting the warden and the fish-head man, stared at Tao Tai in a daze, and the expression on his face suddenly became strange. As one of the 8 distresses and a spy arranged by the Dragon Palace, it was very clear about its colleagues' means. No matter who it was that was poisoned by the neurotoxin, the paralysis was considered good. Even if it was poisoned, it had to be supplemented with various phase to recuperate for at least half a year before it could walk. What was the origin of Black Jiao's helper? Cao Tai turned his head and glanced at Qiu Wudi, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He said in a cold voice, "There is nothing on your body that can arouse my appetite. Trash like you is not worthy of living in this world." Listening to Tao Tie's words, Lin Yuan's eyelids twitched slightly. He suddenly remembered a saying in his previous life that he scolded his good-for-nothing children, "It's better for me to give birth to a piece of barbecued pork than to give birth to you." Tao Tie's words were somewhat similar. So, in your eyes, other people don't even have the qualifications to be food, so they simply don't deserve to live in this world? Almost there. Lin Yuan lowered his head silently, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. It was still the same sentence he said before. Whether it was a human or a monster beast, as long as their cultivation reached a certain level, no one was a fool. Those who treated others as fools were fools. It was just that most of them were used to solving problems by force, so they didn't like to use their brains. But just because they didn't like to use their brains, it didn't mean that they didn't know how to use their brains. Lin Yuan made such a big move here today in order to attract the attention of the entire Endless Sea, and at the same time force the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas to have no way out. They could only stay in the Endless Sea and fight to the death with the old rulers. As for the monster beasts of other races, they would not listen to Lin Yuan's one-sided words. They would definitely send their confidants to the front line arranged by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas to investigate the situation. Once the news was confirmed, there would be no way out. Why did the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas run away? Because they couldn't beat the old rulers. Or rather, even if they could win, the losses would be too heavy, so they were unwilling to fight. The Dragon Palaces of the Four Seas were all like this. If it were the demonic beasts from the Outer Sea or the Sea Monster Guild, they wouldn't have a good time fighting the old dominators one-on-one, let alone the sea dominators who were struggling to survive. If they wanted to win, they had to team up to fight this battle. If one party didn't participate, it meant that their loss would be bigger. Thus, they had cut off everyone's retreat. No one should think about running away. Whoever ran away would be the enemy of the Endless Sea. Then why did the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas hide the matter of the aberrants? Although the Martial Heaven continent was vast and boundless, after so many years of development, whether it was humans, demonic beasts, demi-humans, or other races, they had already occupied most of the land. The population was close to saturation. Even if there was no blood feud between the various powers, they would still attack and kill each other. Through this method, they would reduce the pressure on the population saturation. If the native creatures of the Sky Martial continent were like this, how could there be a place that accepted the demonic beasts from the Endless Sea? If the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas migrated, the Sky Martial continent might not even be able to eat it, let alone the entire Endless Sea. Thus, if they left too much, the Sky Martial continent wouldn't be able to eat it. At that time, not only the native creatures of the Sky Martial continent, even the demonic beasts of the Endless Sea would have to kill each other for survival. With the aberrants coveting behind them, everyone would die if they fought. However, no one would choose to wait for death. This was also the reason why Lin Yuan had directly expressed his stance. Now, where else could accept the migration of the Endless Sea? Only the Shenwu dynasty, which was under the chaos of the Sky Demon. However, the territory of the Shenwu dynasty bordered the northern frontier. In the entire Sky Martial continent, other than the Guardian of the Heavenly Gate, there really wasn't any force that dared to snatch food from the northern frontier. In fact, even the Guardian of the Heavenly Gate had been smashed shut by Lin Yuan's various spiritual objects. Even if they still had some little tricks, they had to be wary of the ancient demon court behind Lin Yuan. If the war in the Endless Sea didn't go well, the only choice for these sea demon clans was to befriend Lin Yuan. Whether it was the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas or the Sea Demon Guild, after leaving the Endless Sea, they were just slightly stronger demonic beasts. They were far from having the ability to challenge the Guardian of the Heavenly Gate. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so few demonic beasts guarding the Heavenly Gate, and those land demonic beasts wouldn't be kept in captivity in the Hengduan mountain range. It was impossible to fight. Therefore, in the end, who could go ashore to ensure the survival of the clan, still depended on whether Lin Yuan nodded or not. Speculators, Lin Yuan softly muttered, and the light in his eyes flickered again. There was no shortage of speculators in any world. Although he had offended the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, there would be countless sea demon clans who were unwilling to bet their lives on this war. They would do everything they could to please Lin Yuan. Whether it was a blessing or a curse, it was hard to say. It was just that the means of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas were indeed somewhat beyond Lin Yuan's expectations. The plan to use the evil dragon camp had been repeatedly deduced 4 times before. Under the premise that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas didn't take action, they could definitely firmly suppress the claws and teeth of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, giving the other demonic beast clans in the Endless Sea time to understand the truth. When the matter of the old ruler spread throughout the Endless Sea, Lin Yuan would naturally become important. Unfortunately, although Lin Yuan had embarked on the path of God, he was not an omniscient and omnipotent existence after all. Although 5 members of the 9 sons of the Dragon Palace had died, he didn't expect that the 2 8-bitter evil dragons guarding the evil dragon camp were also chess pieces planted by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas in the evil dragon camp. If it weren't for Tao Tai, he would have lost his life here today. Your Excellency doesn't have the blood of my dragon race, but you can come and go freely in the deep sea. Your cultivation must be very high. Xiao Buji cupped his fists at Tao Tai and said in a deep voice, although I don't know what kind of friendship you have with this Black Jiao. But if I didn't hear wrong, you were asking for benefits from the Black Jiao before, right? If it's just a deal, why don't your Excellency make a deal with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas? Make a deal with you? Tao Tai raised the corner of his eyes slightly, and a trace of coldness flashed in his eyes. He smiled and said, what the Black Jiao can give, you can't give. Now I'm in a good mood. If you kneel down and accept your death, I can give you a quick death. A guy who makes people lose their appetite shouldn't be alive. As soon as his voice fell, Tao Tai stuffed all the transparent tentacles in his hand into his mouth and chewed them with crunching sounds. Transparent juice overflowed from the corner of Tao Tai's mouth, and was soon licked clean by a scarlet long tongue. Chapter 731. It wasn't until all the transparent tentacles had been chewed and swallowed that Tao Tai's face showed a look of satisfaction. It was as if what he had just eaten was not a carrier of neurotoxins, but some kind of delicacy. Many sea monsters who were watching the battle quietly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. However, in just a moment, most of these sea monsters directly raised their hands and slapped themselves in the face, pulling out the bold thoughts in their minds. That thing can't be eaten. You'll really die if you eat it. Your Excellency, what do you mean by this? Qiu Wuji seemed to completely ignore Tao Tai's ridicule and said in a deep voice, my Dragon Palace of the Four Seas covers the entire Endless Sea. All the races in this sea are the slaves of my Dragon Palace. If your Excellency has anything you want, just say it. My Dragon Clan of the Four Seas will do our best to satisfy your Excellency's request. Although the sea monsters around were dissatisfied, no one dared to act out in public. Today's Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was indeed on the verge of collapse, but that was built on the condition that the aberrations were causing trouble. Now that the fig leaf had been removed by Lin Yuan, who dared to provoke the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas again? They would hit you back, and you couldn't show the slightest bit of temper. Otherwise, they would directly drag you to the front line of the battlefield and directly cut off your clan's inheritance. If the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was serious, looking at the entire Endless Sea, only the evil dragon camp could stand up to them. The other 2 major forces were the Outer Sea Monsters Guild and the Sea Monster Guild. Although their strength was not below the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, after all, their organizational structure was too loose. Without a certain amount of time to integrate their forces, they might be scattered by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas in a face-to-face confrontation. After a while, the 2 sides would fall into a long tug of war and be unable to extricate themselves. Therefore, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas spoke arrogantly, and the sea monsters could only grit their teeth and endure. This is the endless sea. The dragon clan of the four seas has informed the sea areas for thousands of years. It's said that all the races in the sea are the slaves of the dragon palace. This is not wrong. A dull voice suddenly sounded, and immediately, a big lizard covered with brown scales appeared in Lin Yuan's line of sight, maintaining a human posture. With just one glance, Lin Yuan's pupils contracted violently. Divinity. He actually felt divinity from this giant lizard. The cultivators of this world believed that the so-called ancient gods were just some more powerful life forms, which meant that they were the oldest cultivators. Because they could control lightning, move mountains and fill seas, and even turn their breath into ice, most cultivators could do such things. The world in Lin Yuan's previous life had a history of 5,000 years. In the previous eras, there were countless records of civilization. Even some of the secrets of the untainted world could be found in the records. Rather than saying that this world was a small world split from the untainted world, it was better to say that it had been transformed by some mighty force into an imitation of the untainted world. Except that it was not as vast as the untainted world and some secret realms were nowhere to be found, it was almost the original appearance of the untainted world. Because of the high level of civilization, although Lin Yuan had not been in contact with the cultivation world in his previous life, he knew that the cultivation world in his previous life was definitely not comparable to the half-baked cultivation world in the Tianmen continent. At the very least, the people in his previous life were very clear that gods and immortals were different. The so-called immortals were the real top cultivators. They used to be ordinary people. Perhaps they had no name or surname, or perhaps they had left a deep mark in the history books. But without exception, they were all powerful cultivators. They called themselves immortals, and so on, but they would not call themselves immortals, let alone gods. Gods were purely creatures of faith. For example, if enough people believed that a stone was a god, then the stone was really a god. This was the path to becoming a god by absorbing the power of faith. In the ancient tribes in his previous life, they would always believe in some strange beasts as totems to protect the tribesmen. This was the path to becoming an ancient god. Lin Yuan was also working hard to advance on this path. Because although the totems that the ancient tribes believed in were symbols, they were indeed strange beasts that had once existed. They were essentially no different from demonic beasts. They could use the power of faith to improve themselves, and they could also use demonic power to improve themselves. The lack of either would not affect their survival. At first, the system hoped to turn Lin Yuan into a god. Because then, the system could cut off Lin Yuan's channel to obtain the power of faith at any time. After losing the power of faith, the so-called god would quickly perish. It could be said that the system directly controlled Lin Yuan's life and death. But Lin Yuan was not in a hurry to make a choice, so there was an opportunity to talk to the system on an equal footing and cooperate with each other today. Who are you? Lin Yuan's eyes flashed with vigilance. When this path to becoming a god reached a certain stage, divinity would condense in the god's body. This kind of divinity could be recognized as the residue after the power of faith was consumed. It could also be understood as a blessing bestowed by the god to his followers. It was just like how the Western gods transformed humans into angels because they stripped the divinity from themselves and gave it to mortals. That was how angels were born. The big lizard in front of him was not a divine creature like an angel. It was essentially an ancient god. Lin Yuan could feel that there were some thin threads connected to its body that represented the power of faith. This meant that this big lizard still had believers in the human world. Although those thin threads that represented the power of faith were no longer bright, it was undeniable that this big lizard was once an extremely powerful ancient god. Because according to the exact number given by the system, Lin Yuan would have to consume at least 500,000 points of the power of faith to obtain 1 point of divinity. The divinity hidden in this big lizard's body was at least over 100. This ancient god must have been extremely prominent in the past. Even though the power of faith had declined, there were still believers quietly worshipping it. It was likely that it was an almighty being that surpassed the times. Just an old man on his deathbed. This old man has been sleeping here for more than 3,000 years. If it weren't for my young friend, I might have to sleep for another 2,000 years. Although I wasn't waiting for you, this old man is deeply gratified to be able to see my young friend's passage. The big lizard's mouth opened slightly, as if it was trying hard to squeeze out a smile. However, on the lizard's scarred face, the smile was hideous no matter how one looked at it. Sleeping for more than 3,000 years. Sleeping for another 2,000 years. Lin Yuan was not the only one. Almost all the sea demons present held their breaths and looked at the big lizard that suddenly appeared with disbelief. Some people's eyes flickered, some people had doubts on their faces, and some even vaguely revealed a bit of killing intent. It seemed that they were targeting this ancient god of unknown origin. Chapter 732. 5,000 years was enough for a demonic beast king to die of old age twice. But this giant lizard's casual words immediately aroused the vigilance of countless people. This fellow. Could it be that its strength was above the demonic beast king realm? What was its purpose in coming here? If it was for the Black Jiao, was it a friend or a foe? Most of the demonic beasts thought that the giant lizard was bragging, but a small portion did not think so. They also thought that the giant lizard only had a lifespan of 5,000 years. But Lin Yuan was definitely not one of them. Putting aside the fact that this giant lizard was an ancient god, even if it wasn't, having a lifespan of 5,000 years was enough to prove that it was an extremely powerful monster. It could even be in existence on par with the ancestral dragons of the Four Seas dragon bloodline. However, the score couldn't be settled like that. Sleeping was the natural instinct of all living creatures, but who had ever heard of sleeping for an entire lifetime? 5,000 years was a very long time for the demonic beasts of the Tianwu continent. It was long enough to destroy any powerful existence. But Lin Yuan's experience was far beyond that of the natives of the Tianwu continent. He was very clear that there was a group of heaven-defying existences in the world. For example, the demonic gods that existed before Pan Gu created the world. They could sleep for tens of thousands of years. No matter how the world changed, to them, it was just a dream. When one reached a certain level of strength, the so-called lifespan and time were just laughable restrictions. Who had ever seen a violent bear being tied up by a piece of paper? 5,000 years was an unimaginably long time for these demonic beasts, but to an ancient god, it was just a blink of an eye. With the help of the system, Lin Yuan had a better understanding of this world's high-end cultivation system. Above the desolate demonic realm was the demonic beast king realm in the endless sea. The outstanding ones in the demonic beast king realm would be given a title based on their characteristics and personality, representing the recognition of their strength by the demonic beasts of the endless sea. It was common knowledge that an early demonic beast king could not defeat a mid-demonic beast king, but a mid-demonic beast king of the same realm could not defeat a mid-demonic beast king with a title. Long Jiuzi was a demonic beast king with a title, but these titles were just the pride of the Four Seas dragon clan. They were not recognized by the entire endless sea. The realm above the demonic beast king realm, the realm of the ancestral dragons, was usually called the ancestral demonic beast realm, while the corresponding realm for humans was called supremacy. One was the primogenitor of the Yao clan, and the other was the supreme of the mortal realm. Just by their names, he knew the cultivation content of this realm. At this level, regardless of whether it was a human or a monster, they had to create their own clan or force. Moreover, they had to make all of their descendants or servants believe in them and think that they were the gods of the world. Only then would they be able to obtain enough incense to break through to the next level, which was the true energy-shaping realm. Ning Tianqing's transformation seemed perfect, but it was just a method of possession. He hid his demonic soul in a human's body, and it could be suppressed for a few decades. However, as his cultivation level increased day by day, the human's weak body was destined to be unable to contain the powerful demonic soul. At this time, he could only choose a suitable body to possess, or die. In addition to Lin Yuan's transformation, Lin Yuan had seen many human-like creatures in the endless sea. Most of them came from the dragon palace of the Four Seas. Because they wanted to set foot on the land to reproduce, they wanted to have a human-like body. Firstly, it was convenient for them to walk on land, and secondly, it was to ensure that their clan would not be rejected by humans. However, this transformation was even more unsightly. The dragon clan of the Four Seas had been forcibly transformed into a demi-human. It seemed to be convenient for them to move on land, but in fact, it was still not liked by humans. Even demonic beasts looked down on such demi-humans. This step was extremely difficult and dangerous. Once the power of incense was not enough, after 5,000 years, no matter how handsome you were in the past, you would have to obediently turn into a skeleton. Lin Yuan was still in the Mountain Lord realm, but he had already created his own clan, cultivated his own forces, and even officially established a divine clan in the northern region. However, he would rather suppress a large number of attribute points to cultivate his clan and subordinates than to quickly improve his own cultivation. This was the reason why he was unwilling to quickly improve his own cultivation. With enough power of incense, he could transform. It sounded extremely simple, but in fact, it was very simple in the Eldritch world. It seemed that he could cultivate to this step by casually cultivating in seclusion for tens of thousands of years. However, after leaving the Eldritch world, living creatures did not have such a long lifespan. Therefore, in countless years, there were probably many who had reached the Ancestor Demon realm or the Supreme realm, but there were very few who had taken the last step. Why was the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas called the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas? At first, Lin Yuan thought that this was a force related to the legends of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas in his previous life. But in fact, this was not the case. The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was indeed the four dragon clans, and each had the bloodline of the ancestor dragon. Even if the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was connected to each other, the ancestor dragons would not be so harmonious among themselves. They would probably compete with each other for believers. Lin Yuan was indeed in the Mountain Lord realm, and soon, his realm would be directly raised to the desolate demon realm by the system. It seemed like he was wasting his time, but in fact, he was sharpening his axe before chopping wood. Before entering the ancestor demon realm, he had set up believers and god kingdoms to ensure that he could take advantage of the fact that he was still in the safe zone, to not have to think about how to fight for survival with Hongjuan's lackeys. He could focus on developing his own strength, so that he would not be powerless when the time came and waste his time. In the end, he could not cross the threshold and die of old age somewhere. What you are waiting for is, Lin Yuan's eyes flashed, and he took the initiative to ask. The giant lizard frowned and said with some dissatisfaction, "Young friend, although this old man has been in a coma for a long time, he definitely did not live in vain. The more submissive you pretend to be, the more I know that you have the intention to kill." At this point, the giant lizard suddenly said with a deep meaning, "Incredible, incredible." The three realms were originally supposed to be in charge of one side, and the Nether King and the Celestial Emperor might not have interacted in their lives. He would pass on his good deeds, and you would imprison your evil deeds. But what you said just now vaguely changed the destiny. It seems that young friend's foundation is more powerful than I thought. Lin Yuan's expression changed. With the existence of the underworld's black water, he would become the god of the underworld of the Tianwu continent sooner or later. Even if there were gods who were given the authority of the underworld by him in the future, they would only be his lackeys, and it would not be wrong to call them the Nether King. But in this world, other than the Nether King, there was the Celestial Emperor. This world wanted to use his influence to perfect itself. And his simple question just now changed the fate of the Nether King and the Celestial Emperor. Two lines that should not have intersected were about to collide. Chapter 733. Roots? What did having a powerful root have to do with changing fate? Lin Yuan was silent for a moment. He suddenly remembered that his roots were actually the system. After the ancient lizard god revealed that there was another existence in this world who walked on the path of God, his fate with the Sky Emperor had changed. You want me to kill the Sky Emperor? Lin Yuan's expression did not change as he began to communicate with the system in his mind. The sea of bitterness is boundless. After the primordial world was shattered, countless small and medium worlds were born. The three realms stabilized and became a great world. At this point, it is already independent of the primordial world and has formed its own system. Although the Tianwu continent is not as strong as the primordial world, after countless years of development, it already has its own technology tree, cultivation system, and other world origins. It can be considered a mature climate. Otherwise, the natives of this world would not have been able to resist Hongjuan's subordinates outside the gate of heaven. If the Tianwu continent wants to take another step forward, either the heavenly realm or the netherworld will have to appear, causing all things to have the cycle of karma. At this time, it is considered a middle world. The will of this world will be strengthened, and the natives of this world will become stronger. Outsiders like you and Hongjuan's subordinates will be suppressed or even killed. If the Tianwu world's ambition stops here, I can't be bothered to care about it. After all, you will become the lord of the netherworld in this world. You will be bound to the world's consciousness and share both glory and disgrace. It will naturally not think of killing you. However, the information that the ancient god in front of you unintentionally revealed is very fatal. If this world gathers the power of the three realms, it will immediately evolve into a great world. Apart from the area that needs to be slowly expanded, it will essentially be no different from the world of your previous life or the primordial world. From then on, this world will give birth to its own heavenly Tao, and the pressure it exerts on outsiders will be even stronger. Even I will have to give up on this world. As for you, as the Lord of the Three Realms, you will become one of the native gods of this world. You will not be able to leave with me. It can be considered as the system unbinding you. I'm not telling you this to force you to kill the Sky Emperor, because you are now one of my greatest hopes of contending against Hongjun. Therefore, you have the right to speak to me as an equal. Although I changed your fate with the Sky Emperor, how the two of you interact with each other is completely up to you. It may not be a bad thing to refuse my help and become a native god of this world, but it may not be a bad thing to work with me to overthrow Hongjuan's brutal rule. Even if you leave me, Hongjuan's minions will continue to encroach on this world. You can't escape the fate of fighting him. Think about it yourself. The system didn't pretend to be profound. When Lin Yuan asked, it openly admitted to what it was saying and took the initiative to explain it to Lin Yuan. Kill. Lin Yuan also didn't hesitate and made a decision in an instant. Becoming one of the rulers of the three realms in the Greater Thousand World was simply a fool's dream in his previous life. However, when this opportunity was really placed in front of him, Lin Yuan could only sneer. He had been in this world for almost 3 years, and he had almost forgotten that he was still a human. His temperament had been honed to the point that it was close to nothing. As long as he could obtain benefits, he would kill humans, monsters, and even his close subordinates without batting an eyelid. However, the only thing he hadn't forgotten was the deep-seated blood feud that he bore. For 3 whole years, whenever Lin Yuan closed his eyes, he could recall scenes of hell. The faces of his enemies seemed to linger in front of him, wantonly laughing at Lin Yuan all the time. In Lin Yuan's previous life, this was just pure hatred, a hatred that would only end when both sides died. However, after being reborn, he stood in the clouds as a monster and had the power to consign his enemies to eternal damnation. However, he was afraid of the heavenly gate, afraid of the sea of bitterness, and afraid of the ruler of the primordial world. He didn't dare to take that step. Hatred was no longer hatred, but had become a heart demon. The thought of cultivating hard and defeating Hongjun as soon as possible so that he could return to his previous life to take revenge constantly tormented Lin Yuan. He could only approach his goals step by step to alleviate the symptoms of this heart demon. If the three realms converged, he might not be able to leave this world for the rest of his life. At that moment, negative thoughts would flood over like a tide. Even if he could restrain them for a while, he would go crazy sooner or later. The Sky Emperor who would only set foot in the endless sea 2,000 years later had already become a person that Lin Yuan had to kill. You're right. This junior's insignificant cultivation shouldn't have shown off in front of you. Lin Yuan nodded at the lizard ancient god and chuckled. It's true that I want to kill you. Why bother? The lizard ancient god looked up and down at Lin Yuan and bitterly smiled. Since you're the one who took the order, you should know what the appearance of the Sky Emperor means to this world. This old man is about to die, so what happens in the future has nothing to do with me. However, there are only benefits and no disadvantages for you. Isn't that right? This junior has his own concerns. Senior, please lift your hand. Lin Yuan calmly took 2 steps back, while the Taotai stared at the lizard ancient god with shining eyes. Although it didn't know what kind of existence the lizard ancient god was, its instincts told it that once it ate this lizard, the benefits would be incomparably huge. In the future, even if the boss personally came, it would be able to wrestle with the boss. It wouldn't be like now, obediently acting as Lin Yuan's bodyguard because of a few threats from the boss. The lizard ancient god shook its head and bitterly smiled. What happens in the future has nothing to do with this old man, but this matter is very important. If this old man's matter is ruined because of a single mistake, I'm afraid this old man won't be able to rest in peace even if I die. At this point, there was no need to continue the discussion. For an existence like the lizard ancient god, whether it was the Sky Emperor or the Underworld King, they had nothing to do with it. However, if it revealed the secrets of heaven, the Underworld King and the Sky Emperor, who were supposed to be 2 parallel lines, would fight to the death, then the lizard ancient god would not be able to rest in peace even if it died. Senior's physical body is about to fall, and your clan won't be as powerful as it was in the past. If you fight with me, you'll be the one to die in the end. Why bother? Lin Yuan gently shook his head and once again put some distance between him and the lizard ancient god. Even if it was an ancient god that was about to fall, it wasn't someone he could provoke. Even his strongest Taotai might not be a match for the lizard ancient god. If both sides fought without restraint, no matter how fast the insects split, it wouldn't be as fast as the cleansing of divine power. Chapter 734. Unless you change your mind, this old man will fight to the death. The ancient god of lizards shook his head. His eyes flashed, and his body began to grow. Although the ancient god of lizards looked like a giant lizard, it was no more than an ordinary creature. It was about 2 to 3 meters tall. However, when it unleashed its power, the ancient god of lizards instantly revealed its true body in front of Lin Yuan. A terrifying divine power descended, causing all the demonic beasts in the sea region to tremble. This is an ancient god. A look of surprise flashed across Lin Yuan's eyes. Although he wasn't afraid, he couldn't suppress his body's instincts. Under the ancient god of lizards' pressure, he actually couldn't stop trembling. It wasn't bloodline pressure, nor was it the suppression of cultivation level. It was pure divine power. When a powerful ancient god faced off against a new god, the pressure created by the clash wasn't earth-shattering, but it was still terrifying to the extreme. Among the sea demons present, there were many low-level sea demons who wanted to see if they could take advantage of the situation. However, at this moment, all the sea demons below the 5th level of the River Lord realm were crushed to death by the overwhelming pressure. Even though there were many powerful beings around them, they couldn't protect their juniors. They could only watch as their juniors were crushed to death by the divine might. What was more terrifying was that the divine power was still increasing. Ha 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 ha. Qiu Wuji laughed wantonly and mocked, Black Jiao, oh Black Jiao, you think you're so smart, but you offended such a terrifying senior with just a few words. It seems that killing you doesn't need to dirty the hands of the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas. Although the divine power was still increasing, Qiu Wuji didn't show any fear on his face. It was a sea monster in the middle stage of the Demon King realm, and one of the best among them. If it was squashed to death by the inexplicable pressure, there would be no one left in the sea apart from the despair-inducing giant lizard whose origins were unknown. Divine power. Who doesn't have it? Lin Yuan shouted and gritted his teeth. A huge shadow of a black dragon appeared behind Lin Yuan, exuding a powerful divine aura. Moreover, it was also 10,000 feet tall. The terrifying divine aura poured out and was almost on par with the ancient lizard god in an instant. But who was stronger and who was weaker could be seen at a glance. The lizard ancient god was strengthening itself, so just by standing there, it was a true god that could suppress all of eternity. However, Lin Yuan did not use his true body to fight. Instead, he released his own divine soul. In other words, the phantom behind him was an amalgamation of his divine sense. Just this brief moment of divinity had drained all of the Joss flames that Lin Yuan had accumulated. Fighting to this point was already Lin Yuan's limit. But for the lizard ancient god, this was far from its limit. It could barely be considered a warm-up. If it was willing to go on a killing spree, its divine aura alone could wipe out all of the creatures in this sea region. The strength of an ancient god was far beyond the imagination of mortals. Even if it was an ancient god that was about to fall, the foundation that it had accumulated over many years was enough to make any enemy feel despair. The lizard ancient god softly exclaimed and looked at Lin Yuan with a puzzled expression. It seemed that it could not understand Lin Yuan's path. It could detect a familiar aura from Lin Yuan's body, which was the path of the ancient totem god. It was the path of the ancient totem god, which protected human beings and then traded with human beings, using various benefits in exchange for the power of incense. All the power of incense would be absorbed by the ancient totem god to strengthen itself. However, the strength of an ancient god came from strengthening themselves. Although they walked the path of a god, they stepped into the extraordinary realm step by step. In essence, they were no different from cultivators. The only difference was that cultivators absorbed spiritual energy, while totem ancient gods absorbed Joss flames. But Lin Yuan's divinity display did not belong to the path of a totem ancient god. The lizard ancient god could sense that Lin Yuan's physical body was already incomparably weak. He only had the cultivation of a trifling late-stage river lord. He was an existence that the lizard ancient god could casually crush to death. But to be able to manifest his own divine soul, that was the technique of a god of faith. This old man cannot help but sigh with emotion. Every generation produces a new genius. As expected of the future underworld king. His methods are far from what a dying god like me can imagine. The lizard ancient god shook its head, a trace of regret on its face. For a god of faith, once their divine soul was destroyed, even if they did not die, their vitality would be greatly damaged. However, Lin Yuan walked the path of a totem ancient god. His origin was still within himself. Even if his divine soul was destroyed, he could easily use the power of Joss flames to condense an even more powerful existence in the future. Lin Yuan might not be able to last as long as the lizard ancient god if he only relied on his divine power to resist. But if he decided to go all out, his divine soul would self-destruct, and he would be able to severely injure this dying god. In fact, he might even be able to push it infinitely closer to death. If Lin Yuan had enough Joss flames, perhaps he would be able to kill an ancient god that was far more powerful than himself. However, this did not mean that the lizard ancient god did not have a way to kill Lin Yuan. With the strength of Lin Yuan's divine soul, he would need to self-destruct at least 3 to 5 times to kill it. During this time, the lizard ancient god could continuously increase the strength of its divine might. A trifling late-stage river lord's body would definitely not be able to withstand its divine might. Old Senior, although this junior wants to kill the celestial arch, I have no intention of becoming your enemy. Why must you do this? Lin Yuan shook his head with a bitter smile and forced himself to speak. His Joss flames had been used up almost overnight. If he could not scare off the lizard ancient god, only death awaited him. It was true that an old man who did not die was a demon. It was just a momentary lapse of concentration, coupled with the system's secret modification of fate and karma, that ancient god instantly sensed his intention to kill the celestial emperor. If not for that, how could he have fallen to such a state? If the Nether King uses his divine aura to swear that he will never become an enemy of the celestial arch, this old man will stop here. Furthermore, I am willing to pay with my life as punishment for offending the Nether King. The lizard ancient god shook its head, its gaze incomparably cold. It refused to budge an inch on this matter. An oath could not be made carelessly, especially when the world's consciousness had awakened. It would not be an exaggeration to say that there were gods everywhere. Once one broke an oath, they would definitely be cursed. If Lin Yuan swore on his divine position that he still wanted to kill the celestial Arch in the future, his divine position would be stripped away in an instant. At that time, even if Lin Yuan had believers all over the Tianwu world, it would be impossible for him to become a god again. Old thief, you think you can bully a junior of the dragon race just because you are older? Let this god exchange blows with you. A furious roar rang out, but no one could tell where it came from. It was as if the roar was right next to their ears, but also as if it was far away on the horizon. Chapter 735. Who's that voice? No. Impossible. Qiu Buji's expression changed dramatically, and his face was filled with disbelief. Qiu Buji obviously knew who that voice belonged to. Although Lin Yuan did not know, he knew that the other party should be an ancient god. Perhaps he had not lived as long as the ancient god lizard, but he was at his peak and was definitely more powerful than the ancient god lizard. Although the ancient god lizard had not shown his divinity, when the voice sounded, Lin Yuan already felt that the vast divine power from the ancient god lizard could no longer affect him. Obviously, the new ancient god was there to protect him. Lord Ancestral Dragon, why are you doing this? Qiu Buji kept struggling, and his face was ghastly pale. Although he was a spy arranged by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, he was also listed in the Register of Evil Dragons. Unless he had made meritorious contributions, he could not join the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas again. This time, in order to kill Lin Yuan, who had leaked the secret, he and the Resentment Society had exposed themselves, which meant that they had offended both Ao Sifan and Lin Yuan, who were powerful enough to stir up a storm in the Endless Sea. If Lin Yuan did not die, what was the point of all his sacrifices? Ao Sifan knew that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had infiltrated the evil dragon camp for a long time. Before they had enough benefits, they had done all they could to expel him from the evil dragon camp. But Lin Yuan was different. Today, the two sides had become sworn enemies. If Lin Yuan did not die today, he would be the one who would die in the future. However, he could not understand. Lin Yuan had leaked the secret today, which had harmed the interests of the dragon tribe of the Four Seas. If this matter was spread to the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, even the Dragon King of the Four Seas would want to eat him alive. That was why he and the Resentment Society had exposed their identities to kill Lin Yuan regardless of the overall situation. However, when Lin Yuan was on the brink of death, there was actually an ancestral dragon who spoke up to protect Lin Yuan. To the other forces of the Sky Martial Continent, the ancestral dragon was the pillar of the entire dragon tribe of the Four Seas. He was the stabilizing force that could intimidate the other forces. To the dragon tribe of the Four Seas, he was the source of their bloodline. In the entire Endless Sea, the dragon tribe respected the bloodline the most. The four ancestral dragons were the most respected. Even the previous dragon king had to greet the servants of the ancestral dragon. It could be said that with the ancestral dragon as a guarantee, the entire dragon palace of the Four Seas did not have the guts to touch Lin Yuan. Ancient God Lizard and Lin Yuan both revealed grave expressions. It was not difficult to guess that the ancestral dragon of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was an ancient god. After all, they were almighty demonic beasts that had lived for countless years. Even the demonic court that they had served had the title of ancient god. From this, it could be seen how powerful these true dragons were. Furthermore, with such a prosperous dragon tribe of the Four Seas, even if there were other ancestral dragons and other rising stars of the dragon tribe, they were much more powerful than an ancient god like the ancient god lizard who was about to fall. The ancient god lizard was grave because he was inferior to the ancestral dragon. Lin Yuan was grave, but he did not know why the ancestral dragon wanted to protect him. There were ancient experts on the Tianwu continent who used methods to protect him after countless years of rebirth. It was not strange for any kind of expert to appear in the even more vast Endless Sea. Therefore, when Lin Yuan exposed the matter of the Great Old Ones, it could be said that his heart was very calm. As long as a few old monsters that had not appeared in the world appeared, they would be able to make the dragon tribe of the four seas pay a painful price for their greed and contempt. Even if there were no such experts who dared to directly start a war with the dragon tribe of the four seas, it did not matter. Those opportunists who wanted to have a chance of survival would not sit idly by and watch Lin Yuan be killed by the dragon palace of the four seas and still be safe. Well, now a monster-level expert had appeared, and it turned out to be from the dragon palace of the four seas. Just as Lin Yuan had expected, it did not hesitate to become enemies with an ancient god who had the will to die in order to protect Lin Yuan. As the saying goes, a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. This saying was not false. Even an ancient god who was about to die could easily kill a demonic king. Demonic beasts who had just entered the ancestral demon realm and had stepped onto the divine path would not be a match for it. Even other gods who possessed great divine power would not be willing to become enemies with an ancient god who was about to die. This was because the ancient god did not want to live in the first place. If you pushed it too hard, it would drag you down with it in a matter of minutes. An equally huge figure slowly appeared beside Lin Yuan's spirit. Its body was so huge that even the demonic beasts who were still alive were not weak, but they could not see its full appearance. It had an iron-gray body, prismatic scales, and sharp claws that were 1,000 meters long. The ancient god lizard's true body and Lin Yuan's spirit were as tiny as ants in front of this huge figure that was slowly appearing. The ancestral dragon. A hint of fear flashed across the ancient god lizard's eyes, but it did not back down. It said in a low voice, "If you want to kill me, it will only take about 10 moves. However, before your third move, I can easily kill this young friend. If I want to kill him, not just you, but all the experts of the dragon race of the four seas will do the same." Lin Yuan's mind raced. His gaze swept back and forth between the huge figure and the ancient god lizard. Then, he turned to look at Tao Tai. Worry appeared in his eyes once again. Before the ancient god lizard appeared, Tao Tai was definitely the strongest person present. The Society of Resentment, a titled demon king, could not even last one move in its hands. Even with Qiu Bufang and the 5 sons of the dragon race, it could still kill them with one punch. Even the ancient god lizard might not be able to do such a thing. From this, one could see how strong Tao Tai was. However, no matter how strong Tao Tai was, it was like a mouse seeing a cat in front of the ancient god lizard's divine might. It probably could not even use 10% of its strength. At the end of the day, Tao Tai was just an existence formed by countless strange insects gathered together. Although its strength was terrifying when gathered together, it also had the super regenerative ability to split itself. However, when faced with divine might, Lin Yuan could clearly see that the strange insects that made up Taotia's body were easily crushed one by one. If it hadn't had the super splitting ability of 1 to 2, 2 to 4, he would have fallen apart by now. However, this regenerative ability could only maintain Tao Tai's motionless posture. If it moved now, it might cause its body to split apart. Although it was not fatal, it was no longer a threat. However, this baptism of divine might seemed to be a good opportunity for Tao Tai. The insects were crushed one after another, and the resistance of the remaining insects to the power of divinity increased rapidly. The insects that split later were instantly torn apart at the beginning, but now, they could resist for 3 seconds before being torn apart. The improvement could not be said to be small. If one of them could maintain the baptism of divinity, Taotia's strength would definitely rise to another level. However, in the short term, Tao Tai could not be counted on. Chapter 736. Since the descendant of my race isn't willing to swear the oath, you can't force him. The ancestral Greygon's voice rang out once more without the slightest fluctuation in his emotions. You think that your words caused the current situation, but that's just your own obsession. I'll say that you're overthinking it. Today, you were waiting for the descendant of my race. Fate arranged for you to lead him down this path. Pfft, the lizard ancient god sneered and coldly said, "You're just twisting words and forcing logic. I don't believe that after living for so many years, you don't know what kind of fortune the convergence of the three realms will bring to this world. The ancestral Gregon muttered to himself for a moment before suddenly changing the topic. He sneered, I understand. So you don't want to die, but your faith is withering day by day, and your strength is weakening by the day. You don't dare to fight my dragon race in the endless sea, and you don't dare to go to the continent to fight the humans. So you want to earn some merit to prolong your life. The concept of merit was not limited to the primordial world. In his previous life, Lin Yuan had often heard people say that good deeds were rewarded. This was a manifestation of merit. Goddess Nviwa had gained immeasurable merit and became a saint in one step after creating a human being. Although Hung Jun had become a legend after he took control of the way of heaven, the merit and karma had not been erased. Even an ordinary person could prolong his life and be immune to all diseases if he could accumulate merit and do good deeds all year round. The Tianwu world was not a world controlled by Hung Jun. Other than Lin Yuan's system that could interfere with the world's operations, everything else was operating according to the world's will. In this state, merit was merit, and no one would take advantage of it. If one had great merit, even becoming a saint was not impossible. Obeying the world's will and causing the convergence of the three realms was a great merit. While it was impossible to say that one could become a saint through merit, extending one's lifespan by several thousand years was not a problem. Humph, the lizard ancient god snorted. He was not angry that the ancestral Gregon had seen through him. He coldly said, You already know my goal. Why don't you retreat? I can guarantee you that as long as I persuade this brat, I won't attack him again. In addition, this old man will owe your dragon race a favor. How about it? How about it? How about it? What do you think? The ancestral Gregon chewed on the words so what, 3 times. Suddenly, he sneered, if it was in the past, I might have been tempted. But now, whether I offend you or not, the dragon tribe of the 4 seas has been forced into a desperate situation. If you want to obtain this merit to prolong your life, what can you do even if I don't let you? In an instant, the positions between the two were reversed. At first, the ancient lizard god was willing to die, threatening the ancestral dragon with the identity of a dying ancient god. But after being exposed by the ancestral dragon, he didn't deny his desire for merit points. From this, it could be seen that the ancient lizard god didn't want to die. However, the great old ones were aggressive. One of the 4 ancestral dragons had already been infected and mutated. This meant that the great old ones had the strength to destroy the dragon race of the 4 seas. Originally, the dragon race of the 4 seas still had a way out. For example, they could go to the Sky Martial continent to reproduce and so on. However, after Lin Yuan mentioned the matter of the great old ones, the demonic beasts of the endless sea could no longer let the dragon race of the 4 seas leave. The 3 ancestral dragons could naturally use their own strength to carve out a bloody path, but what was the point of that? When one's cultivation reached such a realm, one's faith was already indestructible, and one's spirit wouldn't die. It wasn't a problem for them to kill their way out, but wanting to protect the dragon race of the 4 seas was a fool's dream. After all the dragon race of the 4 seas died in battle, the ancestral dragon's followers would definitely be less than 1 in 10. At that time, their strength would rapidly weaken, and it wouldn't be impossible for them to die. If you insist, then you're forcing this old man to die. The ancient lizard god shook his head. His gaze was deep as he said in a deep voice, Why bother? Could it be that you really want to follow an old man like me to the Yellow Springs? Junior, this ancestor asks you. This old Western medicine's request isn't too much. Whether you agree or not, you have to give this ancestor a word, right? Although he couldn't see the ancestral dragon's full appearance, Lin Yuan could still feel that the ancestral dragon's gaze had landed on him. Facing the ancient lizard god's divine might head-on, Lin Yuan gritted his teeth and said coldly, This junior said before that I must kill the celestial arch. Otherwise, I won't be able to clear my mind and will die sooner or later. This junior definitely won't agree to this condition. Lin Yuan and the ancient lizard god were never fighting over the celestial thearch's life. If the three realms couldn't be gathered, the ancient lizard god wouldn't be able to obtain this merit. Once his faith was extinguished, he would quickly fall. It was the same for Lin Yuan. If he couldn't return to his previous life and take revenge, he would fall into the demonic path sooner or later. When that time came, he wouldn't even be able to retain his sense of self and would instantly turn into a murderous madman. Both of them were fighting for their lives, so naturally, there was no such thing as lowering one's head. Ha 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 ha, good, you have the spirit of my dragon race's bloodline. The ancestral dragon laughed heartily for a while before slowly saying, Big Lizard, did you hear that? The descendant of my race said that he doesn't want to let the celestial arch go. He paused and then said meaningfully, don't pretend to be ruthless in front of me. You don't want this kid to kill the celestial arch because of the merit gathered by the three realms. You deliberately appeared and deliberately guided him so that the world won't succeed in its wishful thinking. You want to take advantage of this variable to defy the heavens and change your fate. I don't believe that you dare to kill him. Checkmate. This sentence could be said to be a fatal blow. The ancient lizard god wanted to protect the celestial Thearcha's name and to gather the three realms so that this world could be promoted to one of the great thousand worlds. Thus, the celestial arch was very important in his eyes. On the other hand, Lin Yuan was just as important in his eyes. Wahahaha, I'm so angry. The ancient lizard god roared and stared at the ancestral dragon coldly. His face was so gloomy that it was almost dripping water. If the ancient lizard god wanted to kill someone, the ancestral dragon would not be able to protect him even if he risked his life. Previously, when he threatened Lin Yuan, he was taking advantage of Lin Yuan's blind spot. He did not think that his life was equal to the celestial Thearcha's in the ancient lizard god's eyes. Now that the ancestral dragon had exposed him, Lin Yuan could be said to be fearless when facing the ancient lizard god again. He did not care about the ancient lizard god's threat at all. Thinking back to how the ancient lizard god had provoked a fight between the Netherworld King and the Celestial Arch, then tried to mediate between them and force Lin Yuan to swear an oath of friendship with the Celestial Arch. This action was tantamount to shooting himself in the foot. Now, not only would he not be able to obtain any merit, but if Lin Yuan insisted on fighting to the death with the Celestial Arch, if one of them really died in the other's hands in the future, then it would be a big joke. Chapter 737. The Celestial Arch had appeared after Lin Yuan, so there were supposed to be two parallel lines that did not intersect. However, the lizard ancient god's sudden appearance today changed that fate. If he did not think of a way to salvage the situation, he might even be hated by the will of the world and die prematurely, let alone get the merit points to prolong his life. He did not dare to kill Lin Yuan, and he could not defeat the ancestral Dragon. The situation was very awkward. It was hard to say how strong the ancestral Dragon was, but he was definitely good at sabotaging others. Although he had not really fought the lizard ancient god, he had forced him into a dead end. From today onwards, I will fight to the death with the dragon race of the four seas. The lizard ancient god glared at the ancestral Dragon with a face full of hatred. He turned around and strode in the direction he had come from. With every step he took, his true body shrank a little. After 100 steps, he returned to his original size. Not only did he not look magical, but he also looked lonely and sad. Then you can die. The ancestral Dragon's voice slowly rang out, as if he had expected this scene. There was no trace of emotion in his voice. As soon as he finished speaking, a golden red ball of energy fell from the sky. It flew so fast that it hit the lizard ancient god's back in the blink of an eye. Lin Yuan only heard a loud bang in his ear. Although he didn't move his feet, he was pushed back 5 meters by a huge force. When he raised his head again, the ancient lizard god that was 100 steps away had disappeared without a trace. Damn it, Lin Yuan's eyelids twitched. He knew that the ancestral dragon wouldn't be weak. After all, he was the ancestral demon that was worshipped by a branch of the dragon clan. The godly power that he had accumulated over the years was bound to be incomparably powerful. However, he didn't expect the ancestral dragon's strength to be so terrifying that it could kill the ancient lizard god, who was also a god, in one move. With such a huge gap in strength, the ancestral Dragon still had the mood to flirt with the lizard ancient god. When the lizard ancient god had restrained his killing intent and was planning to take revenge on the dragon race of the Four Seas in the future, he suddenly attacked as if he had no face. Gulp. No one knew who started it, but the sound of people swallowing their saliva suddenly rang out in the field. They had all experienced the ancient god lizard's strength firsthand. With its boundless divine might and its 10,000-meter-long true body, even if it didn't use any magical techniques, a single stomp could cause the sea demons present to suffer heavy casualties. Yet, it couldn't even withstand a single attack from the ancestral dragon. If the ancestral Dragon had the intention to kill today, the energy ball just now would not have been so small. Just like how there was a quick punch and a stored power strike, the energy ball just now was released instantaneously. There was no process of storing power at all, but that didn't mean that ancestral Dragon couldn't store power to strengthen the explosion's power and range. In the dark, Lin Yuan felt that ancestral Dragon's gaze fell on him again. "Brat, do you think that this old man is shameless? I could have defeated the cauldron with one move, but I had to use words to break its fighting spirit and wait for it to disperse and leave before I attacked." The ancestral dragon's voice rang out slowly. Its body did not seem to have any intention of shrinking. It was unknown whether its body was originally so huge or it was still in its battle state. Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes shone brightly. This was not easy to answer. He felt that if he said that the ancestral Dragon was shameless, he might have to die together with the ancient god lizard. However, he didn't want to say anything against his will. Not long ago, he had made up his mind to make the dragon race of the Four Seas pay a painful price. The plan had just begun, and he was already flattering the ancestral dragon. He couldn't do such a thing. The ancestral Dragon didn't care about his face, but he did. "Brat, if you don't say anything, are you implying that this old man is shameless?" The ancestral Dragon's voice was somewhat cold, as if it was threatening Lin Yuan. The murderous aura penetrated his body. Lin Yuan shivered, but he still didn't say anything. Some things could be done, and some words could be said. However, if he said too many things against his will, it was tantamount to cutting off his own path. In the history of his previous life, the number of experts was as vast as the clouds and smoke. Any one of them could be the enemy of tens of thousands of people. These experts all had one thing in common: they would never admit defeat, and they would never lower their heads. Looking at the ancient myths of Huaxia, such as Quafu chasing the sun, Jing Wei filling the sea, Yugong moving the mountain, and so on, the main point was to highlight the spirit of fighting against heaven and earth. Looking at the Western myths, it was either the dusk of the gods or the final judgment. It was as if humans were born in this world to wait for the end of the world. Therefore, Huaxia was extremely powerful in his previous life. Even if a lion fell into a deep sleep, it would only be for a short period of time. Even if it suffered countless injuries during its sleep, it would immediately soar once it woke up. When had they ever seen a person who was servile and servile become a peerless expert? "Brat, you dare to resist my murderous aura without saying anything. This old man doesn't know whether to praise you for having a backbone or to say that you don't know what death is." The ancestral Dragon's voice slowly rang out. It was hard to tell whether it was praise or sarcasm. Then, he fell into silence with Lin Yuan, as if waiting for Lin Yuan to speak. However, the first to break the silence was not Lin Yuan, but Qiu Wuji, who had been hiding at the side. Qiu Wuji looked at the part of the ancestral Dragon's body with red eyes and roared, "Lord Ancestral Dragon, I don't understand what you mean. This Black Jiao is not a member of the dragon race of the Four Seas." It even revealed the matter of the aberration and put the dragon race of the Four Seas on the fire. If Lord Ancestral Dragon didn't do anything, it would be dead. Why? Why did you protect it? Lin Yuan felt that the ancestral Dragon's gaze had shifted away from him. Without the pressure, Lin Yuan instantly felt much more relaxed. He couldn't help but let out a long breath. However, at this moment, Qiu Wuji's legs went soft and he knelt on the ground. Trash. The Black Jiao's cultivation is only at the late-stage River Lord realm, but it can withstand my pressure. You're a titled demon king, but you can't even stand for a moment. No wonder the dragon race of the Four Seas has fallen to such a state and is even about to lose the right to rule the Endless Sea. You juniors are indeed getting worse with each generation. Even though the ancestral Gregon's expression couldn't be seen, the disappointment in his voice could be heard. Qiu Wuji almost spat out a mouthful of blood. The Black Jiao was at the late-stage River Lord realm? How the hell could it compare to an ordinary late-stage River Lord? That was an existence that could withstand the might of an ancestral demon powerhouse. In the Endless Sea, there are very few things that can escape my senses. I know what the Black Jiao did before. You don't have to repeat it. The ancestral Gregon's voice sounded again. It was still filled with disappointment and a little sadness. Chapter 738. After reprimanding Qiu Buyu, ancestral Gregon once again cast his gaze on Lin Yuan and said in a deep voice, "Boy, don't pretend to be confused. Just now, this old man asked you if you think this old man is shameless. Don't tell me you haven't figured it out yet?" Lin Yuan's eyes flashed and replied, "Senior, you're protecting me." Ha 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 ha. Ancestral Gregon laughed out loud and said with a smile, "Yes, but also not entirely correct. The old lizard is right. If I were to fight with it fairly, I would need at least 10 moves to kill it. However, within these 10 moves, it could kill you at least 5 times. Although it didn't have that intention, who knows what it could do when it was forced into a desperate situation. If it couldn't do that, it could kidnap you and talk to me. Could I still fight back? Either way, I would lose my face. Why should I let the junior take the risk?" Then, he paused and said meaningfully, "Furthermore, you call yourself the Blackwater Dragon King. You rule the northern frontier. Although you're not a tyrant in the entire Tianwu continent, you're still a ruler. You should know that history books are always written by the victors. Today, I ambushed you and killed you when you weren't prepared. However, who would dare to tell you the details? As long as you can win, you should do whatever it takes to win. Whether it's face or dignity, it's just an excuse for the losers." When one first heard this sentence, it sounded like the earnest teachings of an elder to a junior. However, after thinking about it carefully, it was not the case. Why did Lin Yuan turn against the Western Sea Dragon Palace? Because the Western Sea Dragon Palace wanted to use a treasure to interrogate Lin Yuan about his secrets. After they failed, they wanted to imprison Lin Yuan in the underwater prison. If Lin Yuan didn't cooperate, they would imprison Lin Yuan for the rest of his life. As the saying goes, people fight for their dignity, and Buddha fights for an incense stick. With this kind of humiliation, not to mention Lin Yuan, even the Dragon Palace in the Endless Sea who had been enslaved by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas for many years would flip the table. Ancestral Gregon's words had a deep meaning. He wanted to persuade Lin Yuan to lower his head and not continue to be the enemy of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas for the sake of face and dignity. Lin Yuan became silent again. These ancient gods had problems with their brains. One wrong word and they would turn hostile. The lizard ancient god didn't hesitate to confront the ancestral Gregon for the sake of merit. Now that the ancestral Gregon had spoken, it was hard to guarantee that he wouldn't kill Lin Yuan for the sake of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. But to make him lower his head? Don't even think about it. He had suffered enough torture and humiliation in his previous life. Even Lin Yuan himself did not think that he was a normal person. He had psychological problems for a long time. Therefore, when he faced Xia Siyu, Lin Yuan came forward to recruit him. It was not because the criminals and the demi-humans were part of his plan, but because he felt a kindred aura from Xia Siyu, so he had a series of follow-up plans. Otherwise, after the establishment of the northern region, the demon emperor would not have been immediately restrained. If a problem could be solved by killing, then it would be solved by killing. If one's strength wasn't enough, then they would think of ways to weaken the other party. This was the path Lin Yuan walked. It wasn't as imposing as killing 99,000 people, but it was essentially the same. Establishing a faction in the northern frontier to keep the other parties in check was indeed the way of the king. However, Lin Yuan had suppressed the northern frontier with his unparalleled strength and monstrous aptitude. Rather than saying that the civil and military officials of the northern frontier were restrained by the various factions, it wasn't that they were willing to be restrained because they feared Lin Yuan. With such a character, no matter how many thoughts he had, he wouldn't go against his heart. The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had to pay the price. No one would be able to protect them. It's been a long time since this old man has found an outstanding junior in the Dragon Clan. So far, there are only 1.5 who have the potential to step into the Ancestor Demon realm. Ao Siphon counts as half, and you count as 1. If you are willing to let go of your former enmity with the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas, this old man can represent the other 3 brothers to confer you the title of the 7th Dragon God of the Dragon God Palace. Although your strength doesn't meet the standard for the time being, you will receive the corresponding treatment. From then on, you can choose any resources that the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas has. The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas will also have to greet you as a junior. How about that? Ancestral Gragon was still staring at Lin Yuan as he spoke in a sincere tone. Pfft, a sneer sounded from the void. Ancestral Gragon's expression suddenly changed. His figure flashed and reappeared 1,000 meters away, looking at Lin Yuan from afar. It seemed that he was extremely afraid of the sneer that came from nowhere. I will take what I want myself. If I don't want it, there's no point in forcing it on me. Lin Yuan sat up and coldly sized up Ancestral Gragon, who looked as if he was facing a great enemy, as he spoke slowly. Lin Yuan wasn't afraid of the sneer just now because it was one of his own. He was also one of the system's hosts. It was just that he was chosen many years earlier than Lin Yuan. He was also an existence that the system had high hopes for. Although he was walking on the god's path arranged by the system, his clan was a mutated insect, which was the mutated insect that formed the body of the Tao Tai. Then, he artificially created various soul fragments to combine with the mutated insect. After many years of operation, the Tao Tai had countless subordinates with strength similar to the Tao Tai's. The Tao Tai himself was also an extremely powerful god. The system was such an unreasonable thing. Lin Yuan reached the 8th level of the Mountain Lord realm within 3 years because he had deliberately suppressed his growth speed. However, he had already stepped on the god's path at this level and created his own clan. Once the gray-scaled flood dragon person matured, even if Lin Yuan's cultivation level didn't increase, he would still be an existence that couldn't be underestimated when he traveled the myriad worlds with his divine power alone. There were more than 9,000 cheats in the myriad worlds. Any one of them who stood out to support Lin Yuan wasn't someone that a mere native of an incomplete world could compare to. Although each host was from one world and couldn't interfere with each other, they could only reluctantly transact through the system. This was a rule set by the system. However, Lin Yuan believed that if the Ancestral Gragon really had the intention to kill, the system would definitely violate the rules and summon the senior who had sneered to descend, giving the dragon race of the Four Seas an absolutely cruel blow. The Heavenly Tao was the Heavenly Tao. So what if it was an incomplete Heavenly Tao? It wasn't something that any Tom, Dick, or Harry could provoke. When the Great Old Ones offended the system, it immediately triggered a mission to eliminate the Great Old Ones in the myriad worlds. If the dragon race of the Four Seas didn't know what was good for them, the dragon race bloodline in these 9,000 worlds would probably be exterminated. The dragon race bloodline was noble and powerful. Wasn't the witch race created by the 12 ancestral shamans formed from Pangu's body and blood essence powerful? Not noble. In the Great Witch race, the witch race was the loser. It was true that the bloodline could bring help, but it wasn't omnipotent. Otherwise, when walking in the world, wouldn't it be over if you just said that you had the bloodline of a certain race? Why would you need to cultivate so painstakingly? Usually, people would at most be wary of your race's foundation. If benefits were to move people's hearts, who would know who you are? Even in the Sky Martial continent, the number of aristocratic descendants and bloodline demonic beasts that died in all sorts of battles was countless. Chapter 739. The ancestral Gragon looked at Lin Yuan from afar, as if he wanted to see through Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan sat cross-legged. He did not step forward to attack, but he did not retreat either. "Brat, where did you come from?" The ancestral Gragon was silent for a moment before he asked again. Everyone said that Lin Yuan was the reincarnation of the demon emperor of the ancient demon court, but the ancestral Gragon had never thought so. The demon court is indeed powerful. Even a true dragon like me was just a peripheral member of the demon court in the past. It is said that there were powerful people who could fight with the sages in the past. Even if there was a demon emperor, Lin Yuan, the water dragon, would not be able to come here, right? But the sneer just now made the ancestral Gragon fearful. He actually began to seriously consider whether Lin Yuan was from the demon court. After all, in this era, not everyone could have an ancestral demon or supreme demon as a Tao protector. Where did I come from? Lin Yuan tilted his head, a cold light flashed in his heterochromatic eyes. He asked, "Senior, you are a true dragon. Even if the dragon blood demon beasts in this world are your descendants, you should not call yourself the ancestral Gragon, right? Are you not afraid? Are you not afraid that the person in the Dragon Spring Cave under Mount Buzhou will be angry?" Whether it was the system or the Ink Abyss who knew the secret, they all began to escape to other areas of the Bitter Sea after the Great War of the Witches and Demons. There was no witch tribe in the Tianwu world, but there were many demon tribes. Obviously, the survivors of the Great War of the Witches and Demons did not escape. After the Great War of the Witches and Demons, there was the War of Gods. The ancestral Gragon of the Dragon tribe was sealed in the Dragon Spring Cave under Mount Buzhou by the Heavenly Lord Yuanshi during the First Great Tribulation of the Dragon Han. This secret was not a secret to Lin Yuan, who had seen the complete world of the Great War. It was also not a secret to the bloodline of the true dragon. However, the natives of the Tianwu continent did not know. Otherwise, they would not have been so indifferent when a few true dragons called themselves the ancestral Gragon. He did not mention his origin, but used a sentence to make the ancestral Gragon fearful. Coupled with the cooperation of the previous senior, Lin Yuan was 80% sure that the dragon tribe of the Four Seas in this world would avoid him like a snake. Ancestral Gragon almost lost his voice when he heard that. You are from Hong. How is this possible? The heavenly gate is sealed, and even saints are not allowed to enter. How did you manage to enter this world? The moment he said that, ancestral Gragon's expression changed and he said coldly, "You ants also dare to listen to heaven's secrets? Kill." As soon as his voice fell, clouds of blood mist exploded in the field one after another. Except for the Dragon Clan's bloodline, Tao Tai, and Lin Yuan, everyone else was slaughtered almost instantly. In front of the ancestral dragon, these demon kings who ran rampant in the endless sea didn't even have time to beg for mercy before they were obliterated on the spot. The matter of the untainted land was an absolute secret. Not to mention that the bloodline of the dragon race knew, Lin Yuan and the Tao Tai had mysterious origins. It did not dare to kill them easily, but it was more afraid of the sneer from before. However, the other demonic beasts were not so lucky. If he heard something that he shouldn't have heard, then there was only death. "May I ask who you are?" Ancestral Gragon bowed his head slightly, and there was a little more respect in his tone. In his view, no matter what realm Lin Yuan's current, knowing the secrets of the untainted land and even knowing the Dragon Han First Tribulation, he was undoubtedly a big shot in the Dragon Clan. For example, the Green Dragon, one of the four sacred beasts, was transformed from the stars in the sky. There was also the mighty person who was not from the Dragon Clan but called himself the Dragon Ancestor Emperor during the First Tribulation of the Dragon Han Dynasty. There was also the Sea True Dragon King, who was sealed by Ling Baotian and Heavenly Lord Yuanshi. There was also the Five Dragons Great Emperor, who was the ruler of the Dragon Clan in the Taoist Book of Hidden Dragon King. If Lin Yuan was the reincarnation or offspring of one of them, then it was not impossible to say that he was the reincarnation of the demon emperor or that there was a powerful god behind him. Thinking of this, ancestral Gregon's eyes even showed a touch of eagerness. If Lin Yuan really had something to do with these people, not to mention suppressing the mixed-blood dragons, it didn't matter even if he wanted to punish them, because once such an existence was reincarnated and grew up, it would be difficult for the dragon clan not to prosper. I can't say. Lin Yuan smiled but did not say anything. There was no sadness or joy in his heterochromatic eyes. In that case, I won't ask. I still haven't asked why Senior came to the Endless Sea. The eagerness in ancestral Gregon's eyes could hardly be concealed. He had already determined that Lin Yuan was the reincarnation of the dragon clan. After all, the Tianwu world had its own seal. Other than the weak sky demon who could invade, all the wars broke out in the Bitter Sea. Even the strong saints could not enter the Tianwu world to kill the remnants of the Lich demon who did not obey Hongjun. It was not that the saints could not enter, but that this world was just an incomplete world, and the upper limit of strength was there. Just like cultivators who had to ascend after reaching a certain realm, a world had a limit. If the saints descended, they would immediately cause this world to explode. The will of the Tianwu world would naturally do its best to stop them. Furthermore, the 6 saints under Hongjun would not do such a losing trade. If they descended, they would instantly cause this world to explode. At that time, everything would be annihilated. Although they could easily get rid of the remnants of the Lich demon who escaped from the Great Desolate Land, they would not be able to leave either. A saint in exchange for an incomplete world? With all the worlds here, could Hongjun afford it? He only had 6 saints under him, and in order to maintain his rule, Hongjun had cut off the path to becoming a saint. Anyone who wanted to become a saint would first have to consider whether they were a match for Hongjun and the 6 saints. The monsters fighting with the 4 Seas Dragon clan are called the Great Old Ones. Their goal is to destroy the world and wipe out all traces of civilization. Such monsters cannot be destroyed. If the 4 Seas Dragon clan retreats today, in less than 10 years, the entire Endless Sea will be occupied by these monsters. At that time, when they head to the Tianwu continent, where will you retreat to? Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and smiled. Coming from the gate of heaven and leaving from the gate of heaven, don't you want to see if Hongjun will give you a way out? The 2 words Hongjun were still suppressed by the system. After all, he was the saint who controlled the heavenly Tao. As long as someone said his name, Hongjun would immediately be able to sense everything here. But even so, ancestral Gregon still understood who the name that Lin Yuan was talking about was. Senior, please advise us. How should our dragon clan act? Ancestral Gregon spoke again, but his tone was not one of inquiry. Instead, it was a careful probe, as if he was waiting for Lin Yuan to give the order. Bind the various races of the Endless Sea and resist the Great Old Ones. The dragon clan is the leader of the scaled insects. If we are forced to flee by a group of monsters, you can afford to lose face, but the dragon clan cannot. Realizing that ancestral Gregon had misunderstood his identity, Lin Yuan did not point it out. Instead, he reprimanded him with the tone of a senior of the dragon clan. Chapter 740. Northern Frontier, Wei River City. A young man with a gloomy face sat cross-legged on the city wall, looking at the neatly arranged army across the Wei River. Shenwu Dynasty's flag, Shenwu Dynasty's armor, Shenwu Dynasty's soldiers. But everyone knew that the army in front of them had nothing to do with the Shenwu dynasty. Those emotionless soldiers had nothing to do with humans. This was the Sky Demon's army. In other words, it was the Shenwu dynasty's army after the Sky Demon's body was possessed by the Sky Demon. Even the weakest among them was at level 6 of the airborne realm. Sergeants such as Dekarches and sergeants were already at the pinnacle of the airborne realm. Commanders, ministers, and lieutenants were all at Heavenly Dipper realm of varying levels of strength. Lieutenants, deputy generals, and other miscellaneous generals were all at Heavenly Dipper realm. The generals at the level of 4 towns, 4 expeditions, and 5 sons had not appeared yet, but the possibility of their existence couldn't be ruled out. Also, the cultivation of the general in charge of this terrifying army was unknown for the time being. After all, the Sky Demon could sense each other. No matter how powerful a spy was, it was impossible to sneak into the Sky Demon's army to scout for information. No matter how many people went, it was just to supplement the body of the Sky Demon. On the other hand, the Sky Demon's body was invisible. If the northern frontier didn't set up a formation to sense the Sky Demon along the Wei River, who knew how much the northern frontier would have infiltrated by the Sky Demon? The young man turned his head and glanced at the adjutant wearing black scale armor beside him. He said in a deep voice, "Bao Yuan, do you think we are unlucky? General Gao set up so many defensive positions along the river, but we were assigned to Wei River City. We don't have the chance to kill the general and seize the flag. Once the front line collapses, we have to immediately organize a defensive line to face the most powerful enemy." Bao Yuan turned his head and glanced at the young man. A strange look flashed in his eyes. He said indifferently, "I don't know if we are unlucky or not, but I heard that you were the one who made things difficult for me in the allocation. Now that the war is about to begin, you still don't plan to give me an explanation? Aren't you afraid that I'll chop you down in a fit of rage?" The Northern Frontier Military Academy taught military techniques and strategies, but it also paid attention to teaching students according to their aptitude. After graduation, graduates with different personalities would be assigned to various posts as trainee officers. Then, according to their performance, they would be promoted to regular soldiers, reorganized, or directly promoted to the ranks of ordinary soldiers. Bao Yuan was a well-known figure among this batch of graduates from the Northern Frontier Military Institute. Back then, along with Zhao Guangchong and Qin Yu, they were all directly assigned to the Blackwater Army and were given the title of General Star. It was just that their reputations weren't as great as Zhao Guangchong and Qin Yu's, who were sent out to carry out missions and were given important tasks after returning. As a member of the Blackwater Army, if it wasn't for someone making things difficult for him, there was no reason for him not to go to the front line. Instead, he was transferred to the second line of defense. This was completely not in line with the style of the Northern Frontier Military Academies know how to make good use of people. The young man smiled and said in a deep voice, "It's not that I want to criticize you, but I admit that this time I took the initiative to ask you to come and help me. However, the higher-ups have also reviewed it. If you can come to Wei River City, it means that the higher-ups feel that you are needed at the front line. It's unreasonable for you to vent your anger on me alone." Bullsh *T. Bao Yuan roared and swore, "If you don't have such a cheap mouth, why would the higher-ups review it? If I don't have such a cheap mouth, with your character, you can only climb to Zhao Guangchong's current position at the end of the Blackwater Army. You and Zhao Guangchong have too many similarities, but his advantages are bigger than yours. Our top leaders all know that the Blackwater Army has 2 people, Zhao Guangchong and Qin Yu, who can be used. If there is any task, they are the ones to be appointed." The young man let out a long breath and patted Bao Yuan's back. He chuckled and said, "You know, although I am a graduate of the same batch as you, my overall performance in the military academy is not up to standard, so I can't be assigned to the Blackwater Army. Therefore, I am not clear about the difference in strength between you two." Bao Yuan's eyes were wide open. He breathed heavily and didn't speak. What the young man said was indeed reasonable. The Dragon King knew about Zhao Guangchong and Qin Yu, but he didn't know about Bao Yuan. If he didn't have a dazzling battle record, how could a nobody like him be appointed? As for the difference in strength between the Blackwater Army, in the eyes of outsiders, the Blackwater Army was the Blackwater Army, but within them, the difference in strength was like heaven and earth. After all, those who could enter the Star General class were all outstanding in all aspects, or had 1 or 2 specialties that could far surpass those who were eliminated. For example, Bao Yuan. He was born with divine strength, copper skin, and iron bones. Cultivators of the same level couldn't gain any advantage over him. After all, he was an existence that could fight against monsters of the same level with his bare hands. Why was Zhao Guangcheng remembered by the Dragon King? Because when they fought against the Blood Liao Knights, it was Zhao Guangcheng who took the lead. He led his subordinates and bumped into the Blood Liao Knights who were known to be able to move unhindered in the Frost Mirror grassland. He single-handedly killed through the enemy's formation. It must be known that the internal mission of the Blackwater Army had never named anyone to do it. Qin Yu and Zhao Guangcheng were able to enter the eyes of the Dragon King because of their tyrannical strength and daring to risk their lives. Therefore, the other members of the Blackwater Army were mostly envious of these two people, but very few of them were jealous of them. The mission to attack the Blood Liao Knights was placed in front of him. Although Bao Yuan was tempted, his rationality prevented him from accepting the mission. Brother, when I was in the military institute, the dean told me that I had applied for the wrong course. He said that I should report to the Spy Institute or the War Institute. No matter which one I went to, I would be considered a first-class seedling. But I just don't believe it. My body is weak, but I can use my brain to make up for the difference. Why do I have to hide behind the scenes? Why can't I be in charge of the battlefield? A cold light flashed in the eyes of the sinister youth. He let out a long breath and said, "This is the best opportunity for you and me. Whether we can make a comeback or not depends on this battle." "You mean?" The anger in Bao Yuan's eyes gradually subsided. He suddenly shivered and frowned. "The front line will definitely collapse?" "Most likely." The sinister youth nodded with a dignified expression and said, "The strength that Sky Demon's side has shown is enough to make our ordinary soldiers stand aside. Using our elites to exchange with the enemy's ordinary soldiers, whether it's us or those big shots in the northern frontier, we can't accept such a strategy." "Then why set up the front line? Isn't it better for us to wait for the Sky Demon to cross the Wei River and fight positional warfare and guerrilla warfare? This time, our military strength is not at an advantage. It's impossible for the higher-ups to make such a stupid arrangement." Bao Yuan was slightly startled. He obviously didn't believe the words of the sinister youth. Chapter 741. Do you know the composition of the front line? Even the weakest of them is at the Heaven Dipper realm. They are also divided into 100 execution teams. The experts inside are all top-notch assassins nurtured by the embroidered uniform guards and Yi Bus Ho. This move has directly emptied the top-notch combat strength of these two organizations. For a long time in the future, the spy work will be handed over to the MI7 and the Demon the Arch Association. The sinister youth turned to look at Bao Yuan and asked softly. "N?" Bao Yuan's expression changed slightly. He seemed to have guessed something. The gloomy young man sighed and said bitterly, "These people are here to die, and so are the soldiers on the front line. Many of them have received orders to die. As far as I know, there is no commander on the front line this time, but there are supervisors. Their only orders are to charge forward, and charge forward until the higher-ups decide to retreat. As long as the higher-ups don't order them to retreat, they have to die one by one, including the supervisors. They are the last ones to launch the charge to buy time for us. This is impossible." The strange expression on Bao Yuan's face became more intense. He gritted his teeth and said, "Do you know who are the people at the front line? Zhao Guangcheng and Li Zhongxing have all been assigned to the front line. There are also Gao Buzhan and Yan Xingqi, these two experts from the older generation. It is said that the supervisor is the governor of the embroidered uniform guards, Luo Su. Now you are telling me that these people are going to be cannon fodder. Why don't you tell me the composition of our second front line?" The sinister youth shook his head. His eyes revealed a look of pity. It was as if he was sighing for his brother. He only reacted at this moment. The position that he was supposed to go to was a killing trap with a slim chance of survival. 1/3 of the star generals have been assigned to various positions. The equipment and supplies are transported by the king of the northern frontier personally. The MI7 is leading various spy organizations to cover the entire territory. The weakest long-range commander is also Qin Yu. The engineers who are repairing the fortifications are personally led by the dean. The commander is one of the 10,000 Swords Empire's Gemini, Lei Qiusheng. Other than these people, close to 60% of the Northern Frontier's forces have been transferred to the second line of defense. A series of equipment produced by the Ministry of Works have all been moved to the second line of defense. This is the place where the final battle will take place. If it wasn't for the Fubei faction's attack from the rear, I reckon that the king of the Northern Frontier would have transferred a large number of demonic beasts to assist us. The sinister youth stood up and propped his hands on the parapet wall of Wei River City. He murmured, the 10,000 Swords Gemini were famous generals. They could be said to be good at both offense and defense. They were also resourceful. However, Lei Qiusheng was better at defense. If he didn't personally go to the front line to defend the imperial capital and forcefully resist Yan Xingqi's Fallen Star Army, the throne of the emperor would not have been his. The Fallen Star Army of that year was best at long-distance raids and sudden attacks. Once they entered the battlefield, it was like the Great Desolate Star Army. Either they were completely annihilated or they stepped on the enemy's corpses to advance to the next battlefield. There was no retreat. Bao Yuan seemed to have just reacted. He murmured, so this is the reason why Yan Xingqi is the main commander and Gao Jia is the auxiliary commander. In addition, there is also the fierce and ruthless Luo Su. If that is the case, this frontline battlefield really has no possibility of survival. But I still don't understand why. Because of the information. The sinister youth murmured again, our spies have no way to find out the enemy's information. So we can only use the stupidest method, which is to use our lives to force out the enemy's hidden experts. Either we force out the enemy's hidden experts and then beat the gong to retreat, or we all die in battle and get most of the enemy's information. This will allow our battle analysis department to get the best possible information to make the next step of deployment. The first lesson of the military academy, before the troops and horses move, the information comes first. If the students thought that this sentence was different from the Tianwu continent's military academies, before the troops and horses move, the provisions come first, then they would quickly receive a notice to expel them from the military academy. They would either have to leave the Northern Frontier Academy or try their luck at other academies. Looking at all the books on the art of war, only this sentence was the absolute essence. It did not simply mean to start transporting the provisions before the troops set off. Instead, it required the generals to make all the necessary preparations before the troops arrived at the predetermined battlefield. Those who could only understand the literal meaning might not be able to become a qualified general in their entire life. So although this method of sending people to their deaths to obtain information was cruel, it had to be done. If there was no information about the enemy, then the Northern Frontier Academy would have a hard time. To give a simple example, if they did not know the enemy's intentions, where to engage in battle first, where to prepare for battle, how many troops and horses should be arranged in different regions, what equipment should be prepared, how much provisions should be prepared, how to plan the transportation route of the supplies, these were all things that made one's eyes blind. To put it simply, the front lines are just sending people to their deaths. The old will die first, the weak will die later. If necessary, even people like Xiao Guangchong who are destined to become big shots in the future will have to die. The youth patted the parapet in front of him and said with a faint smile, "This is the real battlefield. We have to bite the hardest bone. After this battle, we might all die, but it is undeniable that this is the best chance for us to make a comeback. Otherwise, we will be trampled under the feet of others for the rest of our lives." In the Northern Frontier, one did not care about family background, qualifications, or potential. Only battle results mattered. As long as one grasped the opportunity, they would be able to surpass countless people in an instant. If one did not grasp the opportunity, or if one hesitated, they would be like Bao Yuan and Xiao Guangchong. Even though their strengths and personalities were similar, the treatment they received in the Northern Frontier was as different as heaven and earth. One was a junior that the Dragon King wanted to put in an important position, while the other was an existence that the higher-ups thought was dispensable in the front lines. This was one of the biggest charms of the Northern Frontier system. It was also the reason why countless people would smile and face the Sky Demon's attacks even though they knew that they would die. As long as they did not die, they would play until they died. If they could survive until the end of the battle, they would be second only to one person in the Northern Frontier and above tens of thousands of people in the future. Moreover, even if it was those people who were sending themselves to their deaths in the front lines, what was there to complain about? Not to mention Luo Su, Gao Buzhen, Yan Xingqi, the higher-ups of the Northern Frontier or experienced experts, even Zhao Guangchong was an existence that many people could not catch up to even if they risked their lives. If these people were to accompany them to their deaths, even if the soldiers in the front lines knew the truth, they would not be able to pick out the higher-ups of the Northern Frontier, right? People who were stronger than you, had a higher status than you, had a better background than you, and had better potential than you would all have to die. Not to mention, everyone who participated in the front lines this time knew what their mission was. Except for a few higher-ups, almost all of them volunteered to go. There was no reason for them to regret at the last moment. Chapter 742. Faction Battle Model, Name, Northern Frontier Defense Battle, Not Started, Attacking Party, Sky Demon Army, Strong, Defending Party, Northern Frontier Prince's Residence, Weak, Evaluation, This is an unequal battle. Can you create a miracle? If the host wins this battle, the host will receive 50,000 war points. If the host loses this battle, the host will have to pay 50,000 war points. Looking at the system interface that suddenly popped up, Lin Yuan's eyes flashed with a strange light. It can't be, right? This can affect me. He didn't participate in this battle at all, and the monsters in the Hengduan Mountains probably didn't participate either. Otherwise, there should be a Blackwater Dragon Palace on the defending side, right? He didn't participate in this battle, but he still had to pay the bill if he lost. This was simply ridiculous. If it wasn't inconvenient for him to return to the Northern Frontier now, Lin Yuan even wanted to throw the matter of the Endless Sea aside and directly return to finish this battle. However, this was obviously not realistic because he didn't know the grasping star's technique and couldn't identify the direction in the vast sea. It was easy to go out to the sea from the Wei River, but when he returned, he didn't know where to log in from. The system released the mission to eliminate the Great Old Ones, and the first phase had already been 15 days, which meant that there were still 2.5 months to prepare. This time was probably not enough for him to make a round trip, let alone finish a battle against the Sky Demon. But this didn't make sense. Before he entered the Endless Sea, he had clearly done something to divert the trouble. It couldn't be that the Southern Interest Group was so weak in front of the Sky Demon and was wiped out so quickly, right? In that case, something must have happened at the Heavenly Gate. All the Heavenly Gate Guardians' forces in the Southern Shinwu dynasty were transferred to other places, so the Southern Interest Group was so weak? If this wasn't the case, Lin Yuan really didn't know how to explain why the Sky Demon Army had already started a war against the Northern Frontier before he had even settled the matter of the Endless Sea. Senior, what's wrong? Ancestral Gregon turned his head to look at Lin Yuan, who suddenly stopped, and asked with a puzzled face. There is a Sky Demon in the Endless Sea. Lin Yuan raised his head to look at Ancestral Gregon and asked with a solemn expression. Ancestral Gregon was silent for a moment, then he shook his head and said, Impossible. When the Sky Demon appeared, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had already contacted the Guardian of the Gate of Heaven. They said that the Northern Frontier would take care of these Sky Demons, and they would be responsible for controlling all the Sky Demons in the Shinwu dynasty. Recently, the Guardian of the Gate of Heaven has not contacted us, which means that they do not need the help of the dragon race of the Four Seas. In that case, everything should be under their control. It is impossible for the Sky Demon to exist in the Endless Sea. When Ancestral Gregon saw that Lin Yuan was still not moving forward, he asked again, Senior, have you noticed the Sky Demon? Ancestral Gregon was not afraid of the Sky Demon. Although the Guardian of the Gate of Heaven had a headache over the Sky Demon's indelible nature, he also knew that the Sky Demon was just a small trick used by Heng Jun to harass the Tianwu continent. The real battlefield was still in the Sea of Bitterness outside the Gate of Heaven. Although the cultivators of the Tianwu continent no longer had the strength to participate in the Sea of Bitterness, and could only defend one side of the Gate of Heaven, guarding against the prehistoric creatures that might charge in. However, to the ancestral Gragon, who came from the prehistoric times and had lived for countless years, a mere sky demon was just an ant. Ask the spies you arranged in the Azure River Empire and see what the situation is with the rebels in the south of the Shenwu dynasty. Lin Yuan's eyes were full of gloominess as he said in a deep voice, although I do not know the specific details, the Sky Demon Army has already deployed troops at the Wei River and is about to attack the northern frontier. Something must have happened. Ancestral Gragon had already determined that he was the reincarnation of a mighty dragon from the prehistoric times. No matter how miraculous his methods were, it would not arouse Ancestral Gragon's suspicions. On the contrary, the more methods Lin Yuan displayed and the more mysterious they were, the more certain Ancestral Gragon would be about his fake identity. I'll do it now. Ancestral Gragon nodded slightly and replied softly. That's right, I really don't have a way to purify the bloodline. Lin Yuan stretched his body and said slowly, the dragonization root that I mentioned earlier is a spiritual item that can purify the bloodline. However, the side effects are extremely great. If a non-dragon blood creature consumes it, it will turn into a monster and then explode and die. If a dragon blood creature consumes it, there is a chance that its bloodline will be purified, but there is a higher chance that it will turn into a mindless monster and eventually explode and die. Whether it was a human or a demon beast, they should know their limits. Although Ancestral Gragon had misunderstood Lin Yuan's identity, there was still a huge gap in strength between them. If Lin Yuan could not give the Four Seas Dragon tribe a definite benefit, he might not even be able to keep his life, let alone make the Four Seas Dragon tribe a pawn in his hands. Although both sides had tacitly agreed that Lin Yuan was the reincarnation of a mighty dragon, Lin Yuan was not stupid enough to directly order the Four Seas Dragon tribe or even the Ancestral Gragon around. There were some benefits that had to be given, but some ugly words had to be said first, lest both sides were put in an awkward position. Senior, may I ask what the probability is? Ancestral Gragon turned his head and asked expectantly. Now that the Four Seas Dragon tribe was facing a crisis, it was hard to say if they could survive. If there was a way to purify the bloodline of the dragon tribe, then they would give it a try even if it meant risking their lives. Even if they could not survive, it would be best if a few more true dragons could appear. One day, the Four Seas Dragon tribe would rise again. I'm not sure. Lin Yuan shook his head and said in a deep voice, the dragonization root I obtained was an opportunity given to me by some human cultivators out of greed. I won't go into the details, but the place where this thing grows has many water serpents and flying serpents. It is very difficult to harvest it. Those human cultivators would catch some dragon bloodline demon beasts to try, but as far as I know, none of them have succeeded. Whether it was Lin Yuan from Earth or Ancestral Gragon from the Untainted Land, they all knew what a flying serpent was. There were many names for flying serpents. They could be called poisonous snakes in the water, or young flood dragons. However, they were definitely related to the dragon tribe. The Ancestral Gragon did not doubt that the spiritual things that grew in places where flying serpents and water serpents gathered were beneficial to dragon bloodline demon beasts. After all, no one would care about things that did not benefit them. This was the same for both humans and demon beasts. As for the question of the success rate, Lin Yuan did not lie. He really did not know what the success rate was. In any case, he had failed back then. Although Zhang Xiao had maintained his sanity after he changed his blood, he was still a failure and turned into a monster. It was hard to say how long he could live, but he was sure that the success rate of purifying the bloodline of the dragonization root was so low that it made one's hair stand on end. Chapter 743. The eagerness in the Ancestral Gragon's eyes dimmed almost instantly. No matter how powerful the reincarnation of a senior from the dragon clan was, it was useless if it could not bring benefits. Although in the distant future, as long as the Black Jiao did not fall, he would definitely become an all-powerful existence. Whether the dragon clan of the Four Seas could survive until then was still a question mark. Furthermore, the Black Jiao had clearly stated that he would definitely not leave the Endless Sea before getting rid of the Great Old Ones. This news had already been spread out in advance. Even if the ancestral Gragon killed all the demonic beasts present, it would be useless. Therefore, before the trouble was solved, the Black Jiao would not leave. Even if he wanted to arrange for some dragons to leave with Lin Yuan and invest in Lin Yuan's future, he would have to see if the other sea demon clans would agree or not. Seeing the ancestral Gragon's expression instantly return to indifference, Lin Yuan sneered in his heart and said in a deep voice, "However, you have also reached the ancestral demon realm. You should know that there are thousands of divine paths. Some gods cultivate faith, some gods cultivate merit, but I walk the path of the totem ancient god." The ancestral Gragon's expression changed. He said doubtfully, Senior, are you playing with me? The path of the totem ancient god has been completely cut off since the rise of the human race. In the past, many members of the dragon clan had protected the human tribes and became one of the totems of the human race. However, after the rise of the human race, their inheritance was cut off and they became ordinary demonic beasts. Senior, how could you walk the path of the totem ancient god? Even in the untainted world, the dragon clan was an extremely powerful clan. Although there were also strange beasts like the golden-winged great roc that hunted the dragon clan for food, they were only a minority. Otherwise, the dragon clan would not have been able to become the leader of the scaled insects and become the tribulation clan of the first calamity of the untainted world. It was normal for weak creatures to seek protection from strong creatures. When the way of the ancient totem god was flourishing, there were indeed many humans who sought the protection of the dragon race. The dragon race was also willing to provide protection to humans because of the incense they offered and taught them a lot of knowledge. Even in the era of Lin Yuan's previous life, the people of Huaxia still claimed to be the descendants of the dragon race even though the supernatural forces and gods did not appear in the world. Later on, due to the competition between the various parties, the dragon race declined and the human race gradually rose. With heroes, leaders and human kings, there was no need for them to worship other powerful beings. The path of the ancient totem gods was gradually cut off and was gradually replaced by the path of belief in the gods. Even the Yin gods of the past dynasties belonged to the members of the path of belief in the gods. Once they lost their faith and incense, they would quickly perish. However, the Yin gods would change almost every dynasty. Any Yin god that could exist for so long was an incredible existence. The most famous ones were the two door gods of the Tang dynasty. In Lin Yuan's previous life, the so-called sacrifice had been cut off. In the feudal dynasties before that, even if the humans offered sacrifices, the target was no longer the various ancient totem gods, but the heaven and earth. There were too many secrets. It could be compared to when Qin Shi Huang unified the 6 countries. The way of heaven also eliminated the belief in various totems. The method of offering sacrifices to totems was almost completely wiped out, leaving only the ritual of offering sacrifices to the heaven and earth. Senior, are you related to the way of heaven? Although the ancestral Gragon did not exactly call out the way of heaven, the hostility in his tone was quite strong. The untainted land was indeed a very chaotic world. Other than the public enemy of everyone, Hong Jun, the way of heaven was not welcomed. Unlike the protagonists in the novels of Lin Yuan's previous life who were always against the way of heaven, the existence of the way of heaven had always been the great enemy of the untainted land creatures. Because the way of heaven required every living being to act according to the rules, the more powerful the living being was, the less they liked to abide by the rules. It was normal for both sides to constantly fight. The way of heaven was selfless. The experts of all the worlds hated the way of heaven for being selfless. Lin Yuan slowly raised his head, glanced at the ancestral Gragon, and said indifferently, "What's the difference if I'm related or not? I'm walking the path of the ancient totem gods. Isn't it enough to know that?" The ancestral Gragon cursed in his heart, but did not dare to speak his mind. The ancient totem gods could indeed trade with ordinary living beings through sacrifice, but the ancient totem gods had another way to strengthen themselves: killing and plundering. The ancient totem gods could devour each other. Therefore, the human tribes in ancient times liked to go on expeditions. It was not purely because of their own will, but more because the totems they worshipped wanted to devour the totems of other tribes to strengthen themselves. There were indeed thousands of gods, but the most dangerous one was not the evil god, but the ancient totem gods. The danger of the evil god was only targeted at ordinary gods, but the danger of the ancient totem gods was targeted at other gods. However, when it came to trading, the ancestral Gragon's mind once again became active. When trading with the ancient totem gods, as long as he gave them enough chips, he could get everything he wanted. The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had dominated the endless sea for countless years, and the various kinds of wealth they had accumulated could be said to be endless. As long as he could persuade the other 5 dragon gods, the overall strength of the dragon clan of the Four Seas would soar. There were a total of 7 seats in the Dragon Temple. In addition to the 4 ancestral Gragon who founded the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas, there were also 2 rising stars of the Dragon Clan who had ignited the godly fire one after another, walking on the path of gods from ordinary monsters. Although they were not as famous as the 4 ancestral Gragon, in the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas, they were no less crowded than the 4 ancestral Gragon. Among them, the strongest had even begun to create their own clan. However, the ancestral Gragon of the North Sea, one of the 4 ancestral Gragon, knew too much about the old rulers. Even if he became a god, he still could not escape the fate of being aberrated. This was the main reason why the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas wanted to retreat. Although they did not know the details of the aberration, they knew that even if they became a god, they could not escape the strange spiritual infection of the other party. Originally, the Dragon Temple with the 6 dragon gods was supposed to be the impregnable fortress of the entire Endless Sea. It could be said that as long as the Dragon Temple existed in the Endless Sea, the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas would be above the heads of the various sea demon clans for a day. However, after learning a lesson from the past, the so-called impregnable fortress instantly collapsed from the inside. If the conditions permit, I hope that the spies you arranged in the Azure River Dynasty can move and cut into the northern frontier at the right time to fight the Sky Demon. With the means of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas and the invincible warships of the Azure River Dynasty, it should not be a big problem to defeat the Sky Demon army, right? Even if you can't defeat them, you can still share some of the pressure of the northern frontier. Lin Yuan pursed his lips and took the initiative to change the topic. What do you mean by the conditions permit? It means that if the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas wants to make a deal with me, you have to immediately create conditions to mobilize the fleet of the Azure River Dynasty. Even if you can't defeat the Sky Demon army, you have to delay a part of the Sky Demon army with your life to share the pressure of the Battle of the Northern Frontier. Chapter 744. I will contact them as soon as possible. Ancestral Gragon nodded slightly and made a promise again. Lin Yuan was silent for a moment, then slowly said, "In that case, I will send you here." Ancestral Gragon's face showed a puzzled expression almost as soon as his voice fell. Lin Yuan chuckled and shook his head, saying, "You don't think that I plan to go back to the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas with you, do you? Do you think that the current Dragon Palace of the Four Seas is no different from the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas in the past, and can summon the entire Endless Sea with a single order?" This time, I told them about the matter of the aberrations. As long as the other sea demons of the Endless Sea are not stupid, they will definitely arrange for their capable subordinates to go to the front line of the battle between the Dragon Palace and the aberrations to gather information. At this point, Lin Yuan's tail curled up, and his voice suddenly became cold. At that time, most of the sea demons will participate in the war against the aberrations. However, the reputation of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas is too bad. If I go with you, they would probably rather fight on their own than listen to the orders of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Do you believe me? What does that have to do with us? If they fight on their own, then so be it. Ancestral Gragon stubbornly retorted Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan sighed softly and said in a deep voice, "It doesn't matter if they fight on their own. Anyway, the ones who die are not members of the dragon clan. However, have you ever thought about how many soldiers they will create for the aberrations if they rush to the front line without knowing anything?" This, Ancestral Gragon was speechless for a moment. The Sea Demon clan attacking the aberrations would not affect the Dragon clan of the Four Seas no matter how many casualties there were. This was his thought from the beginning, but Lin Yuan's words led the problem to a deeper point. These sea demons fighting against the aberrations without knowing anything would undoubtedly be infected by the aberrations. Then, they would become one of those troublesome aberrations. They would probably have to contribute hundreds of thousands or even millions of soldiers to the aberrations. I've said that the dragon tribe of the Four Seas doesn't have a good reputation in the Endless Sea. Even if it's you, you can't deny that you will use this matter to harm the sea monster tribes to weaken them, which will ensure the dragon tribe of the Four Seas' absolute ruling position in the Endless Sea. You can deny my words, but I also believe that after you understand the crux of the matter, you won't deliberately do anything to harm the sea demon clans, because such actions will indeed weaken the sea demon clans. On the other hand, how can the dragon clan of the Four Seas be spared? It was just a matter of order. Besides, even if you don't want to harm them, the dragon blood demonic beasts under your command won't think the same way. Even you don't know what will happen in the end, do you? Lin Yuan's tail gently slapped the undercurrents away, and he said in a low voice, "Even if you take care of everything, the sea demon clans won't choose to believe the dragon palace of the Four Seas. Before they suffer losses, they won't ally with the dragon palace of the Four Seas. If I stay with Ao Siphon, many sea demon clans will come to join me and respect me as the leader to fight against the dragon palace of the Four Seas. But in essence, they will still be fighting against the aberrations, and it will also prevent many unnecessary losses for both sides." The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had wanted to weaken the sea demon clans for a long time. If it wasn't necessary, no sea demon clans would make such a stupid decision. "Then I'll have to trouble you, Senior." Ancestral Gragon nodded again, expressing his agreement with Lin Yuan's concerns. Lin Yuan leaked the information about the aberrations, cutting off the dragon clan of the Four Seas' path of retreat. But this incident was also an opportunity for them. If they could incite all the demonic beasts in the Endless Sea to fight against the aberrations, why would the dragon clan of the Four Seas have to lose their territory? Even if the dragon clan of the Four Seas set foot on the Tianwu continent, they would only be in the outermost coastal area. They still wouldn't be able to escape the pursuit of the aberrations. If the aberrations cleaned up the sea demon clans and then came ashore, the dragon clan of the Four Seas would have to face the aberrations from the entire Endless Sea. At that time, would the dragon clan of the Four Seas still have a way out? Continue to retreat into the depths of the continent? Like a clown, vainly trying to become the enemy of the entire world, only to be tragically exterminated in the end? After watching Ancestral Gragon leave, Lin Yuan slowly closed his eyes. After thinking for a while, he turned his head and walked toward the sea area that was already covered with blood and minced meat. He could vaguely see the evil dragons cleaning up the battlefield. "Lin Yuan. Senior, why have you come back?" After Lin Yuan returned to the sea, Ao Siphon quickly came out under the lead of the evil dragon that looked like a sea monkey. When he looked at Lin Yuan, his eyes were filled with deep shock. A few months ago, Lin Yuan was still a delicious cake in the eyes of the dragon clan of the Four Seas. It was suspected that he had mastered a strange method to purify the dragon clan's bloodline. He also controlled the territory north of the Shinwu dynasty where humans and demonic beasts lived together. He was also a strong contender for the position of the next beast master of the Hengduan mountain range. For most of the dragon bloodline demonic beasts, Lin Yuan was definitely an existence worth roping in at all costs. With Lin Yuan's ship, the entire clan could be guaranteed to prosper for nearly 1,000 years. However, the dragon palaces of the Four Seas that really came into contact with Lin Yuan obviously didn't think so. They, who were used to being high and mighty, didn't put Lin Yuan in their eyes at all. From the very beginning, they treated the relationship with an attitude that Lin Yuan found disgusting, as if Lin Yuan, as a dragon bloodline demonic beast, owed the dragon clan of the Four Seas and should hand over all the good things to them. Lin Yuan didn't have any blood relationship with the dragon clan of the Four Seas. The only time he needed the cooperation of the dragon clan of the Four Seas to attack the Shenwu dynasty, Lin Yuan immediately said that he would personally go to the Endless Sea to negotiate with the dragon palaces of the Four Seas. It could be said that he understood the propriety just right. Under such circumstances, Lin Yuan would be crazy if he didn't become hostile to the dragon clan of the Four Seas. The sea demon clans that were willing to treat Lin Yuan as a treasure couldn't get in touch with Lin Yuan, and those that could get in touch with Lin Yuan hoped that Lin Yuan would kneel down and communicate with them. More than half a month ago, Lin Yuan was still a prisoner of the dragon clan of the Four Seas. For some reason, after he escaped from the prison, he was hunted down by the entire dragon clan of the Four Seas. If it were other demonic beasts, they might not have a place to stay in the entire Endless Sea. However, Lin Yuan was different. He set up a trap for the 9 sons of the dragon clan and pushed the entire sea demon guild to the opposite side of the dragon palaces of the Four Seas. He even swaggered to the dragon clan's place and exposed the matter of the aberration and some secrets that the ancestral Gregon emphasized not to tell outsiders. He even made the ancestral Gregon bow to him as a junior. This Black Jiao was a living legend. Ao Siphon was also a top demonic beast in the Endless Sea, at least in the demonic king realm. However, compared to Lin Yuan, it was like a passerby without any drama. Chapter 745. Do you really want me to leave? Lin Yuan asked back with a smile. Without my help, you'll just be an evil dragon for the rest of your life. Perhaps in the eyes of most sea demons, you're the majestic leader of the evil dragon, but in the eyes of the dragon clan of the Four Seas, you're just a chess piece that can be crushed at any time. Yes, Ao Siphon slowly lowered its head and replied in a low voice. Its ideal dragon palace of the Four Seas and the current one could be said to be two extremes. It was true that it wanted to make changes, but with its strength, it couldn't even deal with the current Dragon King of the Four Seas, let alone the few dragon gods who were in charge of the Dragon Temple and could intimidate the entire Endless Sea. Without the help of external forces, everything was just empty talk. I can help you with this matter, but relatively speaking, what can you repay me with? As if he couldn't see the gloominess and disappointment in Ao Siphon's eyes, Lin Yuan cleared his throat and asked. Ao Siphon was slightly stunned. It smiled bitterly and touched its face with its claws. It said bitterly, Senior, you've seen what happened before. Although I'm not poor, I can't even control my own subordinates. How can I repay you? Speaking of this, Ao Siphon hesitated for a moment and changed the topic. You're the reincarnation of the Demon Emperor. My thoughts are just a joke in your eyes, so I'll be frank. Since you've taken the initiative to mention this matter, it means that you agree with my idea of changing the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, and you have a way to help me. For this, I'm willing to give everything. As long as you ask, I'll do my best to prepare. Ao Siphon's sudden frankness directly caught Lin Yuan off guard. Ao Siphon only hesitated for a moment before, but after Lin Yuan's words, it was immediately silenced. Although the path of the gods was different, Lin Yuan wouldn't doubt the power of the gods. Although the ancestral Gregon wouldn't play any tricks on him, at this moment, this sea area should still be under the ancestral Gregon's divine sense. No matter what he wanted to say to Ao Siphon, the ancestral Gregon would know immediately. If his words were too explicit, it would bring about a fatal disaster. But if his words were ambiguous, it would give him a chance to take advantage of the loophole. Control Ao Siphon. What could he use to control them? The Nether Realm's black water would not work. His method was no secret to the dragon race of the Four Seas. Even the sea demon clans with a little bit of power knew that he had a black water that could refine living creatures into puppet-like existences. These refined creatures would not only obey his orders unconditionally, they were also unbreakable and unkillable. However, these creatures would become a part of Lin Yuan and be under his control. They might not even have self-awareness. Based on this flaw alone, Lin Yuan was sure that Ao Siphon would not accept it. Perhaps it was willing to sell its soul and loyalty to Lin Yuan, but it would not be willing to have its self-awareness erased and not even be able to act on its own. Using the Nether Realm black water would only cause both sides to turn hostile. Furthermore, with Lin Yuan's current cultivation, it was definitely not enough for him to refine Ao Siphon into a nether river creature. Thus, he extracted all the Joss flames that could be converted into energy and condensed them into the soul that had confronted the ancient lizard god. Most importantly, refining Ao Siphon into a nether river creature did not meet Lin Yuan's requirements. Lin Yuan was actually not interested in a dragon palace of the four seas that accepted other sea demon tribes and no longer placed itself above the clouds. However, if he wanted to overthrow the current system of the dragon palace without alarming the 5 dragon gods, he indeed needed a member of the dragon palace and a new system. After all, he walked the path of an ancient totem god. Anyone with a bit of knowledge would not choose to be hostile to him. Therefore, unless it was absolutely necessary, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would definitely not fall out with Lin Yuan. Under such preconditions, Lin Yuan wanted to change the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. He wanted to stuff a large number of non-dragon blood demon beasts to weaken the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. He would then plan slowly instead of relying on the Great Old Ones, the Sea Demon tribes, and the Sea Demon Guild to destroy the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. The price of falling out with him was not something he could bear right now. With a good helper like Ao Siphon in front of him, how could Lin Yuan not use it? Senior? Seeing Lin Yuan's silence, Ao Siphon asked somewhat anxiously. He did not doubt Lin Yuan's ability at all. After all, even the ancestral dragon had to pay respects to a junior. What qualifications did he, an existence that was not even a real dragon, have to doubt Lin Yuan? Perhaps Lin Yuan was not the ancestral dragon's opponent, but he had casually summoned that existence called Tao Tai before. Although he did not know how the other party came and went without a trace, he knew very well that since Tao Tai could defeat the Resentment Society in an instant, it should not be difficult to deal with it. I was just thinking that I should ask you for something. Lin Yuan raised his tail and motioned for Ao Siphon to be quiet. His eyes sized up Ao Siphon for a moment, and an idea was overturned. As a curse poison produced by the system, it could be said that there was no antidote at all. Once the blood in the body was replaced by him, it could be said that he had the other party's life and death in an instant. But then again, although the curse poison was heaven-defying, if he wanted to control a powerhouse in the Demon King realm, he still needed to pay a large amount of demonic power to complete this matter. Even if the demonic power in his body was abundant, it was estimated that he could not do this and would still be directly drained. So that's how it is. Is Senior still considering? Ao Siphon smiled bitterly again and took the initiative to suggest, this junior has a suggestion, I don't know if Senior is willing to accept it. The Dragon Clan of the Four Seas has a treasure called the Scale of Destiny. Using this treasure to conclude a contract, no matter how much both parties regret it afterward, they must strictly carry out the contents of the contract. Otherwise, under the mighty power of the Scale of Destiny, their body and soul will be scattered. Scale of Destiny? Lin Yuan's face showed a dumbfounded expression. In addition to the rope that was wrapped around his neck and tried to make him confess everything, the system directly destroyed it. The Dragon Clan of the Four Seas had too many strange treasures in their hands, right? It was just that he did not know what level this Scale of Destiny was at. As long as Senior is willing to help me change the situation of the Dragon Palace, this junior is willing to give up everything. Even if this junior becomes one of the Dragon King of the Four Seas in the future, this junior will offer unlimited loyalty to Senior. At that time, everything this junior has will also belong to Senior. How about it? When Lin Yuan was a little stunned, Ao Siphon continued to speak, as if it had completely made up its mind. It seemed that as long as it could change the situation of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, it was willing to give up everything. Chapter 746. Lin Yuan was not surprised by the appearance of an existence like Ao Sifan. As the old saying goes, when a country is about to perish, there will be evildoers. Although this sentence was often taken literally, it actually implied that when the forces that were about to perish lost control of their own territory, ambitious and scheming people jumped out, intending to replace the ancient regime and step onto the stage of power. Compared to some ambitious people who only had selfish desires, there would be another kind of existence. They hoped to change the forces that were about to perish through their unremitting efforts, so that the aging country could continue to live and bloom with new brilliance. This kind of person was usually called a person of ambition. No matter what the final result was, they were an existence worthy of admiration. Ao Sifan was obviously a person of ambition. At the juncture of the destruction of the deputy of the Dragon Palace, he was active on the stage of the Endless Sea as an evil dragon. He was thinking about how to change the self-destructive attitude of the Dragon Palace. No matter how many losses he suffered, how much blood he shed, even if he was depressed sometimes, a little stimulation could make him regain his original heart again. The scale of destiny, interesting. Lin Yuan slightly nodded and said indifferently, I will find time to contact the ancestral dragon. The oath between you and me will be as you said just now. I will help you change the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, and you will give me everything you have. 20,000 miles away. The ancestral dragon, who sensed all of this through his divine sense, slightly paused. A strange color flashed through his gray vertical pupils. He could not understand this black Jiao. If he coveted the power of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, he only needed to follow him back to the Dragon Palace. From then on, Lin Yuan would be the seventh dragon god, and the entire deep sea area of the Endless Sea would be redivided. At least 1/10 of the territory would be given to him. However, he did not hesitate to refuse to be the seventh dragon god. As a result, he turned his head and got together with another evil dragon, as if he was determined to change the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Except other non-dragon blood demon beasts. How could that be possible? Even though the dragon tribe of the Four Seas had declined and was no longer as powerful as it was in the untainted land, it was not an existence that ordinary demonic beasts could associate with. In the past, although the 9 sons of the ancestral dragon were also mixed-blood demonic beasts and not real dragons, they were all extremely powerful and could leave their names in the long river of history. Although their bloodline wasn't as noble as the ancestral dragon, the mixed-blood dragons they gave birth to could easily dominate the top of the food chain of the beasts in the sky martial world. They had ruled the Endless Sea from scratch and had never met an opponent. Even the mutated ones only had the strange spirit infection ability that they were afraid of. What right did those bumpkin demon beasts without the bloodline of the dragon clan have to associate with them? Taking a step back, even if Lin Yuan and Ao Sifan really changed the current situation of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, so what? The authority of the Dragon King of the Four Seas belonged to Ao Sifan, and Ao Sifan offered her loyalty to Lin Yuan. Did that mean that Lin Yuan had unified the entire Dragon Palace of the Four Seas? But that was the problem. The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas sounded like the highest level of the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas, but those who knew a little about the Endless Sea knew that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was just a general name. The top level of the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas had always been the Dragon Temple, and almost all the territories were managed by the Dragon Temple. The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was just the 4 crystal palaces in the Endless Sea, just the tip of the iceberg. Even if he unified the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, the authority and territories that Lin Yuan could obtain were far less than that of becoming the 7th Dragon King. Moreover, the Dragon King of the Four Seas was not a pushover. Even if they were only the best among the Demon Kings, they had all touched the threshold of the late Demon King realm. They were not on the same level as Ao Sifan, who was stuck at the mid-Demon King realm. However, if the Black Jiao really walked on the path of the Totem Ancient God, with the cultivation resources that Ao Sifan had accumulated, it would be impossible for her to reach the sky in one step. However, if she wanted to reach the level where she could compete with the Dragon King of the Four Seas, it would be possible. Alright. The ancestral Gragon spoke softly and murmured, "It's just the dragon palace of the four seas. If you want it, give it to me. Let me see what other trump cards you haven't shown." Then, he turned his gaze back to Lin Yuan. In the end, demon beasts are still demon beasts. Even if their bloodline is powerful and they have lived for a long time, in terms of cunning, they are far from being comparable to humans. It's just that this world is too backward, and that's why demon beasts are dominating this place. Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes did not show any joy or sadness, but he was leisurely criticizing in his heart. Perhaps the ancestral Gragon was a powerful and wise existence in the eyes of other demon beasts, but compared to Lin Yuan, who came from the future and was used to countless schemes in reality, on the internet, and in history, the ancestral Gragon was just a half-baked existence. There was a saying in his previous life. Some people really lived for 10,000 days, and some people only repeated one day 10,000 times. Compared to Lin Yuan, who had been influenced by the internet and received the explosion of information, the demon beasts of this world, even if they had wisdom comparable to human beings and endless experience, were just the kind of existences who had repeated one day 10,000 times. If he guessed correctly, the ancestral Gragon would be wondering what he was planning right now. Was he throwing away a watermelon for a sesame seed, or was he secretly planning something else? Curiosity was often the first step to the abyss. As for existences who had lived in loneliness for a long time, once they took the first step, they would play the role of audience and supporting role 100%. They would even take the initiative to cooperate with Lin Yuan and see what Lin Yuan's next move would be after he helped Ao Siphon control the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Thinking about that, Lin Yuan calmed himself down again and looked at Ao Siphon. He said casually, "It's true that I can give you some help, but it doesn't mean that you can see the changes in the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas if you do nothing. Otherwise, why would I want to cooperate with you?" The joy in Ao Siphon's eyes disappeared, and it asked solemnly, "I only hoped that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would change its current arrogance and conceit, but I haven't been able to find an entry point. At first, I had a few like-minded friends whom I could talk to, and I thought that I had found a confidant. As it turned out, they were all spies that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had planted around me. They were cooperating with me on purpose and did not really think that my idea was correct. Also, they had been misleading me all the time. So, until now, I still haven't found an entry point to push forward with this matter." Speaking of this, it paused for a moment and seemed to be somewhat ashamed. After 2 breaths, it murmured, "If I may ask, Senior, what can you teach me?" "Entry point? Isn't that the best entry point?" Lin Yuan's eyes flashed with a stern look, and he asked in a gloomy tone. Chapter 747. 3 days later. Northern Frontier, Wei River. Yan Xingqi was wearing a silver armor, sitting in the front-line commander's tent. His resolute face was filled with a solemn expression, but there was a hint of excitement in his slightly cloudy eyes. Ever since he lost to Lei Qiusheng, Yan Xingqi had been exiled to the northern frontier. Although he was guarding Shunning City with the title of Guardian, he did not have any military power. At most, he was just a powerful cultivator. Unlike the life he had long been used to, Yan Xingqi spent most of his time in the northern frontier, eating and waiting for death. He was so bored that he was about to become depressed. However, after the rise of the Black Jiao and his arrival at the northern frontier, he actually had the chance to command an army of thousands again. How could he suppress his excitement? Even though this battle would be very difficult, and could even be said to be a narrow escape. Here, and here, there are suspected to be experts overseeing. We need to pay attention to them. Finally, we need to pay attention to this place. Whether it is the enemy's military deployment or the geographical location, it is very likely to be a granary arranged by the Sky Demon Army. It could also be a trap to lure us into. Luo Su stretched out his hand and pointed at the war sand table in front of him, his expression equally grave. There were close to 170,000 northern frontier elites on the front line battlefield. Among them, there was no lack of graduates and instructors from the Northern Frontier Military Academy. Almost 4/10 of the experts in the Northern Frontier had been drawn here. They had set off from the source of Wei River before the Sky Demon Army and arrived at the place where the Sky Demon Army was preparing to cross the river. They planned to meet force with force and engage in a bloody battle with the Sky Demon Army first. This battle was not to force back the enemy, nor to kill the enemy. The only requirement was to force out the Sky Demon's trump card as much as possible. This plan came from Luo Su, and it was called the Death Trap Plan. As the name implied, it was to use their lives in exchange for information on the Heavenly Demon Army. In Luo Su's initial plan, this team was destined to be completely annihilated, and the plan would fail if even one of them returned alive. In order to show his determination, the person who came up with the plan, Luo Su himself, personally participated in this plan, and even participated in the battle as a supervisor. He was the last one to charge at the Heavenly Demon Army. However, the Death Trap plan was forcefully changed by Li Zhong. As long as the Battle Analysis Department felt that there was enough information, Li Zhong would order them to retreat. They would sacrifice some people to delay the Sky Demon Army so that the remaining people could return to the second defense line. To put it simply, Li Zhong believed that even if the elites on the front line were wiped out, they might not be able to get all the information about the Sky Devil Legion. As long as they had a rough idea, it would be enough for the analysis department to make a deduction. There was no need to let everyone die. Granary? Yan Xingqi slightly raised his eyebrows and said with a frown, "If that's the case, perhaps we can change our attack plan. We can give up on part of the battlefield and focus our main force on the enemy's granary area. No matter if this is a trap or not, there should be a large number of sky demons appearing. If they can't take us down, there will be an endless stream of sky demons appearing. Those old men from the Ministry of Works should be able to get the information of these sky demons through the equipment we carry, right? Although the sky demon was immortal, if they wanted to affect the material world, they needed a physical body. Although it was not impossible for them to survive without a physical body, they would have no chance to interfere in this battle. After all, even if the Sky Demon could take over a body, it would need time to destroy the original soul of the body and even more time to nourish the body so that it would have the corresponding strength. It seemed that the immortal Sky Demon had an advantage over the northern frontier, but in reality, this was not the case. The Sky Demon could only die once. Even if it was not imprisoned by the magic sealing bottle, it would directly bid farewell to this battle. Other than dying on the battlefield, the Sky Demon had to properly nourish its body. Only by sleeping and eating could it live well. Otherwise, it would die if its body collapsed. No matter how strong the Sky Demon's influence was, it could not control a corpse to do all kinds of actions. That's the logic, but Luo Su's face showed a touch of difficulty. He said bitterly, "The possibility of this place being a trap is very high, and it is impossible for all of us to go there. The second line of defense is still waiting for our information. Before they are ready, we have to block this section of the Wei River to prevent the Sky Demon from crossing the river and attacking the second line of defense in advance." Speaking up to this point, Luo Su sighed and continued, "If we are separated, it will be very difficult. After all, we can't communicate with each other. Once the Sky Demon launches a feint attack, it will be easy for us to believe that all of the people who participated in the raid on the granary have died." Yan Xingqi reached out and touched his chin. A light flashed in his eyes and disappeared. He said coldly, "Our strength is ultimately inferior to the Sky Demons. If we take the initiative to attack, we can only choose this granary. Otherwise, we will not be able to achieve our goal. However, your worry is indeed a problem. In my opinion, why don't we lure the enemy out?" Lure the enemy out? Luo Su was slightly stunned. He asked doubtfully, "How do we lure the enemy out?" Now that they had deployed their troops here, they were waiting to meet the Heavenly Devil Army's vanguard head-on. How were they going to bait the enemy into attacking? Headquarters could probably send a set of female clothing to the Heavenly Devil Army's commander, right? We know nothing about the Sky Demon's intelligence. We have to use our lives to gather intelligence. However, looking at this matter from another perspective, the Sky Demon is not completely ignorant of our intelligence. Yan Xingqi reached out and stroked his beard. He smiled and said, if an important person or an outstanding junior with limitless potential appears on our side, how do you think the Sky Demon's side will react? In order to assassinate the experts on the Sky Demon's side, the experts from the Imperial Secret Service and Night Unremitting had all come out and formed an assassination team hidden in the shadows of the frontline troops. However, the Sky Demon's side would definitely be prepared. They should have also arranged for a counter-assassination. These people could transform into deadly assassins and assassinate the important people on the northern frontier. What a good plan to lure the enemy out. A bright gleam flashed across Luo Su's eyes as he laughed sinisterly. Turning passivity into initiative, you set up a deadly trap for the Sky Devil, and even forced him to jump into it. You are indeed one of the Gemini of myriad swords. Commander Yan, you must let me participate in this mission to lure the enemy out. Luo Su was also a general when he served the Shenwu dynasty. He was the commander of the Zhanshan City Garrison Legion. He was considered a first-rate general with real power in the northern frontier. Naturally, his military knowledge was not low. He immediately saw through Yan Xingqi's intention. Once the Sky Demon fell into the trap, not only would experts appear one after another, they would even use their lives to kill the important people on the northern frontier in order to destroy the morale of the northern frontier. Chapter 748. From the assassin's side to the assassin's side, theoretically speaking, we do have the upper hand. An emotionless voice echoed and said casually, but the problem is that we are different from the extraterrestrial devils. We even need to pile up detailed information about the enemy with our lives. Where do we find the manpower to set up traps for the counter-assassination? Fancy operations might have miraculous effects, but everyone, calm down and think about it. Don't tell me that not only will this go overboard, but we'll also lose a lot of manpower without getting enough returns, and we won't even be able to achieve our most basic goal. Luo Su's gaze moved slightly, and he quickly found the person who poured cold water on them. He was born in a small aristocratic family in the north, but it was a stretch to call him an aristocratic family. At most, he could be considered a tyrant. If it wasn't for the Dragon King occupying the northern frontier and sweeping through the northern territories, this small aristocratic family would have to sell off their ancestral properties and become commoners after 1 or 2 generations. Their descendants might not even be able to touch the threshold of cultivation. However, this young man was the most outstanding one in this small aristocratic family. He had a good reputation in his hometown and had successfully entered the Northern Frontiers Strategy Institute. This time, he had volunteered to participate in the Death Room operation, so Luo Su had a good impression of him. I don't think so. Another disciple of the Strategy Institute spoke up. He stared straight at the young man who poured cold water on them without any intention of backing down. The Strategy Institute's policy of nurturing their disciples had always been like this. Compared to the united and friendly training of other academies, the Strategy Institute's instructors preferred to create all kinds of opponents for their students to sharpen each other. It was like raising poisonous insects. As long as your methods were in place, even if you were clearly in the wrong and threw the blame away, the Strategy Institute's instructors would still judge you as the winner. The Strategy Institute's disciples couldn't watch performances. No matter how bright and elegant they appeared to be, those who could successfully graduate from the Strategy Institute were not easy to deal with. Any one of them would be punished by the reporters with major demerits, detention, and so on. The punishments written on their resumes were endless. The Strategy Institute's disciples never looked at the instructor or the content of their studies. As long as they could graduate, they would be considered a qualified schemer. After graduation, the cleaner their resumes were, the more powerful their methods were. Everything else was just a facade. Most of the time, their results weren't as convincing as their resumes. Su Linrui, why do you have to follow me everywhere? The young man slapped the edge of the sand table in front of him and growled, "I won't bicker with you over small matters, but this time, we can't afford to be careless. If there's even the slightest mistake, who knows how many lives we'll have to pay for it." Su Linrui crossed his arms in front of his chest, and said indifferently, "Shen Feng, I am not going against you in everything, but this matter is indeed not stable. With your personality, we definitely cannot hide how much fighting strength we have in our hands from you, so you should also be very clear about one thing." At this point, Su Linrui paused and smiled bitterly. "Even if we follow our original plan and stuff everyone's heads in, the information we get won't meet the requirements of the higher-ups. So this opportunity can't be missed." It wasn't that the people who participated in the space of death weren't afraid of death, but they definitely didn't want their deaths to be worthless. If they were to talk about stability at this time of life and death, the outcome would definitely not be good. Su Linrui clenched his fists as if he had the entire situation under control. He said in a deep voice, "Let's take a gamble. Even if we lose, it's actually not a big deal. It's just a matter of dying sooner or later. If we can kill a few deputy generals or lure out the experts hiding in the Sky Demon army who haven't shown up yet, our side will have profited greatly." Although the aristocratic family Shen Feng was born in wasn't a rich or powerful family, they still had some savings and had no problem supporting the cultivation of their descendants. However, the way they cultivated the younger generation was somewhat petty. Simply speaking, Shen Feng still maintained the mentality of doing less and making fewer mistakes. After everything was done, he sought stability. He didn't seek to make contributions, but he wanted to be helpless. Su Linrui was born in a proper humble family, so he wasn't homeless on the streets. Before the Dragon King took over the northern frontier, he could barely get enough to eat and wear. Whether it was cultivation or studying, he almost had no fate with them. However, his luck was not bad. He met the Dragon King when he took over the northern frontier. Although his cultivation was a little late and his starting point was much slower than the children of the aristocratic families of the same age, it wasn't to the point where he couldn't cultivate, or even if he cultivated, there was no future for him. For these children of humble families, when an opportunity appeared in front of them, it was like a hungry dog seeing a meat bone. As long as they were stunned, they would absolutely not let go. Luo Su took in all of this. An undetectable light flashed across his eyes. He opened his mouth, but didn't say anything. While Luo Su was observing Su Linrui and Shen Feng, Yan Xingqi was also observing Luo Su. After seeing the light in Luo Su's eyes, he quickly realized that Luo Su probably already had a plan. After pondering for a moment, Yan Xingqi slowly said, "Soldiers are unpredictable. No matter if it's good or bad, they all need to have enough combat power to support them. However, it's obvious that we don't have enough combat power. We can only use our lives to make up for it." As his voice fell, Shen Feng and Su Linrui both fell silent. Since Yan Xingqi had proposed the idea of splitting up the troops to lure the Sky Demon experts to attack the important people of the northern frontier, then it was obvious that he supported that idea. With the identity of the frontline commander, unless Shen Feng had a way to persuade Yan Xingqi, the entire battle plan would definitely be changed. This battle plan was most likely to be executed, but the frontline army didn't have enough combat power to ensure that everyone who acted as bait would be safe. Then, they would definitely have to give up some people and use some fake and real methods to ambush a group of Sky Demon experts. At the same time, they would be able to obtain as much information as possible about the experts on the Sky Demon's side. Then, who should they give up? Even though almost everyone who participated in the space of death didn't want to return alive, they had come to the mortal world and become cultivators. Who would want to die for nothing? To be a hero that would be recorded in the textbooks of the Northern Frontier Academy, or to be an ordinary number in the Ministry of War's list of casualties. With such a choice, everyone would want to choose the former, right? Even though our camp has an array that can detect the Sky Demon, and we're not afraid of the invisible Sky Demon coming to spy on us, our actions should attract the attention of the Sky Demon. They will soon understand our intentions. However, They have the power to crush our frontline army, so they will definitely take the bait. Zhao Guangchong stood up and said calmly, I agree to carry out this plan. Furthermore, I apply to be one of the sacrificial pawns. This is my opinion. Don't try to persuade me. I will not change my mind once I've made up my mind. Chapter 749. Nonsense. Luo Su's expression stiffened as he scolded. What kind of status did Zhao Guangchong have? He was a student of the Northern Frontier's Star General class. He was a junior who had to call Lin Yuan teacher. His strength and potential were not bad. Although he occasionally messed up a few missions, most of the time, even if Zhao Guangchong risked his life, he would not disappoint Lin Yuan. From Luo Su's perspective, as long as Zhao Guangchong did not die, he would definitely become an important figure in the Northern Frontier's military. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't persuade Zhao Guangchong and the head of the Weapon Institute, he wouldn't have wanted Zhao Guangchong to participate in this death trap operation. Now, Zhao Guangchong's words were no different from seeking his own death. Commander Luo, when you refused to let me participate in this death trap operation, I knew that you thought highly of my future potential. However, I feel that you're overthinking things. I'm only at the middle level in the Star General class. The only reason I caught teachers was because I gritted my teeth and took on a mission that might have led to my death when I faced off against the Blood Liao Knights. In this death trap operation, our military strength is severely lacking. To put it bluntly, you might die, and Commander Yen might also die. In that case, is there any reason why I can't die? Although the Sky Demon Corps has been isolated by various detection arrays, we don't know how long they've been infiltrating the northern frontier. I'm afraid that all the people who have taken the elixir of immortality still haven't been completely cleaned up. The list of important people on our side has probably long been placed in front of the commander of the Sky Demon Corps. This is why I believe that Commander Yan's plan to attract and assassinate us will succeed. The Sky Demon Corps is like a jackal. Their greed determines that they won't miss this opportunity. However, if it isn't an important mission, the Sky Demon Corps might also give up on the assassination. This time, the bait must be someone with a high position in the northern frontier, or an outstanding reserve talent in the northern frontier, or a junior like me who is starting to have some reputation. If we release some worthless people as bait, the Sky Demon Army might not take the bait. Forgive me for being blunt, but everyone in the commander's tent can be considered as bait, and those outside the tent are not qualified. At this point, Zhao Guangchong rubbed his nose and chuckled. As for why I became an abandoned pawn, the reason is very simple, I understand. Without waiting for Zhao Guangchong to finish, Su Linrui also stood up and said in a deep voice, in the eyes of the Sky Demon, the more valuable the bait appears, the more powerful the Sky Demon will be attracted. The rest of the assassins will be scattered to assassinate the less valuable bait. Because some of the monsters did not want to identify with their strange appearance, Lin Yuan called them demons and handed them over to Diablo to command. The monsters created by Lin Yuan had the ability to reproduce. Although they were creatures created by the system, they were no different from ordinary creatures except that they could not cause direct harm to Lin Yuan. Therefore, the demons that had been hiding in the dark were now one of Lin Yuan's most powerful trump cards. The demons created by the system at the beginning had almost all died in the war when Diablo occupied the territory in the Hengduan Mountain. Now, almost all of Diablo's subordinates were second-generation and third-generation demons. They were not very loyal to Lin Yuan, but they could cultivate and reproduce on their own. They still had Lin Yuan's twisted sense of admiration for the strong, blind loyalty, and community. As the strongest of the demons, Diablo had naturally become the leader of all demons. With one order, countless demons would die, because in the demon's mind, the strong had absolute control over the weak. Unless a new demon lord who was as strong as Diablo appeared, or Diablo died, with Diablo's loyalty to Lin Yuan, this unexposed demon army would be Lin Yuan's in the palm of his hand. However, Lin Yuan was not in a good mood. Another trump card has been revealed. This is really troublesome. I can intimidate the jackals for a while, but how can I intimidate them forever? Without the absolute power to conquer the world, how many trump cards can I reveal? Murmuring, Lin Yuan tried to empty his mind and began to refine his demonic power.